friend gave me this for my Chris Redfield Halloween costume.
Really?
You know, Chris Redfield, like in the intro. But it's terrifying. I barely know how to use it, and it like fucking explodes in your face.
Do it. Show it, please.
Yeah, no, it doesn't like light though. I think it doesn't have. I don't think it has stuff in it, like the fluid or whatever. Clearly, I'm a smoker.
I love that thing that people do where they can like hold it and then they just like, and it's just out
Like
and they're holding it,
flink,
it's on fire.
flink. Yeah.
No. They just do it like with one hand. Like they don't even need two hands. They just do these ones, and somehow they turn it on. I don't know, man.
Almost.
Those people are impressive.
It's
You're
cool.
impressive too, Jake.
What can I say? Yeah, I just need like a toothpick in my mouth, and I'll be like a cool guy.
Can I just say as well?
You're already a cool guy.
Thank you.
I agree.
That means a lot.
You're wearing a Hideo Kojima t-shirt. I mean, only the coolest of kids wear Hideo shirts.
Yeah.
It's a deep cut of Hideo as well.
Technically it's not about him.
Black screen.
Yeah, it's about Psycho Mantis. It's a Psycho Mantis is on the back too. I can't
turn around.
But
is it turn around? Come on, do it.
Turn it around.
Do it. There he is.
Oh, yeah. Are you
really
getting the because the Uniqlo are re-releasing the Metal Gear Solid shirts.
What?
I considered it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the collection from like 10 years ago.
Well, that just cost me some money.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much for that.
I'm doing a service to all the Metal Gear perverts.
By the way, can we make sure that Stuart actually puts up a photo of Jake's cosplay for Halloween, because it is so like
which one?
It was which one? He did two.
He did two.
Oh, that's right. He did two. He did the Friday show Batman, and then
yes,
of course, and then the Resident Evil one.
One might say it's too
incredible.
much.
No,
I don't agree.
I didn't dress up at all because I was out.
Yeah, me either.
No.
Me either. But we don't really do. We kind of do Halloween here in Australia. I've definitely noticed that we're doing it a lot more these days than we were back in the day. It's
cool.
taken over. The brands won. The candy makers got their way, and so now we're doing it here. You know.
If my friends were posting pictures of walking down streets where every single person had loads of like decorations and chocolate, and the kids were all dressed up, and Greg Miller, my old roommate, they went to one where someone had a cotton candy making machine and were just giving kids, and I was like, when I went trick-or-treating as a kid, my mum cut 3 holes in a bin bag and sent me out as a witch, okay? and I remember getting yelled at by trick-or-treating, so it's a whole other world over here.
Our neighborhood was all right. It was like if you walk down our street, it was just like Mary Poppins and movie accurate, like strikingly movie accurate Batman just drinking beer and handing out full-size candy bars.
Oh wait, you're a full-size house.
It was first year in the new neighborhood, so it was like when you go to jail and you fight the biggest person there on the first day. It's like you gotta show off, you gotta like flex. So I was like, let's do it.
Is that a thing? Is it full size? Is a thing where that makes a lot of sense. I can see that's like
kids
a flex.
freak out. It's cool. Also, there was one kid dressed like Link, and I acknowledged him. I was like, "Whoa, Link!" And he held up a sword, and I was like, "That's a cool sword. That's the Master Sword." And by acknowledging that, he thought that meant that he could hit me. So he just started striking me with it, but thankfully I was Batman, so I fucking gauntleted that shit.
Good, you had that shit under control.
Who would win in a fight, Batman or Link?
Welcome to the Friends Per Second podcast. This is a podcast where 4 and sometimes more friends gather to talk about video games and stuff. This is episode 33, believe it or not. I'm Jake Baldino. I'm joined as always, of course, by Ralph, aka Skill Up, Gerard the Completionist, and Lucy James. How you guys doing?
Hi. I'm doing all right.
Good. Lucy and I
doing good.
Lucy and I raised money for charity for 4 or 5 days, so we're exhausted, but well, other than that, I feel pretty good.
I don't know about you, but Monday
successful.
Oh yeah,
Monday was rough. Yeah, we raised $81,000 for dementia research. And, yeah,
it was all. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. We also got to debut gameplay reveal for Penny's Big Breakaway, the new Evening Star game by the guys who made Sonic Mania. That was really cool.
Cool.
Really
Interesting.
World premiere. Take that, Jeff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a lot of if you ever want to see Lucy laugh at my pain. There's lots of footage of me getting bodied online somewhere. So lots of waxings and hot sauces.
Oh,
I got to
I
wax a
see.
couple people.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
waxed Tam, and is it Barry? He was,
Barry, Barry Kramer.
yeah,
Yeah.
He
Right.
was so good. There's a point I watched the video back, and I didn't realize that you can hear him go like such a high pitched
Just a little tiny.
Love it.
No, it was so fun. But also, I think one of the things I'm also very glad for, like, super glad to be there, highlight a bunch of indies, and obviously raise a lot of money. But we got to hang out with Tam on Monday and just chill out and have like a really nice lunch and just go to the beach. And
Hell yeah.
and then, came back.
I love a nice lunch.
Wait, where was this? Where was this?
LA.
LA?
LA, right. Okay.
Yes, not
Nice.
downtown, not the block
No.
that you
Not
only
the-
know.
That's right.
The
Yeah.
rest of
It was in the crypto arena, or it was nowhere. That's the only space
I booked
that
my
exists.
Game Awards hotel today, and there was a point where I
Did
was
you?
just like, I don't even need to look at the address. I know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, it's like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. No, well, I guess that's something we can say. We're going to be in LA for the Game Awards in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be there doing an in-person episode, which is very exciting. Really always love doing that. That's well, when I say always, it's the second time we've done it, but we've done other in-person episodes in LA. This will be the second time we've done it for the Game Awards, though. It's a really great night. It's just cool. It's just celebrations and meeting cool people, and I love it.
And we all get to dress
really,
up.
Really pumped. I'm
I'm
thinking
gonna wear a
about
zoot
that.
suit.
What's a zoot suit?
Yes.
The
Are you
mask.
really, Jake?
It's the suit that he wore in the mask. Midnight
Oh.
yellow. but,
Oh,
like, with the
Hell
tails
yeah.
and-
Are you going to
Yeah.
have like big shoulder pads and shit
and
going
like
out or what?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
I just made that
cool.
up. I'm not going to do that.
Oh.
God
Absolutely
damn
not
it.
gonna
Why
do
Damn
not?
it,
Just
Jake.
do
No.
it.
I'm going to do the Game Journalist special, the t-shirt under a blaze. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, with some like
That's what
high
I
tops
do,
on.
baby. Let's go.
Yeah, but you're like the OG. You make it look good.
I'm the OG. What do you mean?
I'm jealous of all the people that actually managed to pull off really cool suits and like they've clearly put the effort in and they managed to land it. I'm like, I don't know if I could ever do that, but one day I'll get my shit together and try.
I have a dress, so I feel like it's easier. You know, I just
Yeah.
dress or whatever.
Sure.
Well, last year, remember how there was so many articles about like gamers, please, when you come to the Game Awards, don't and everyone was like, all right,
Get
fine.
fucked.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, genuinely, my first ever Game Awards, I think in 2018 or 2019, I wore this beautiful dress, right? It had like, it was backless. It had this like gorgeous sticky out train thing. It looked incredible. Man was wearing jorts. No shade to jorts, but it was like, commit to a theme. Commit to something. You can't just have the open dress code. You can't give that to gamers because they'll just turn up in jorts.
Look, there's only two people in the world that can wear jorts: John Cena and Skill Up. No one else.
Oh,
Damn
wait.
it. I was
and-
really
knew it
hoping
was
I was
coming.
going to escape some. I knew it was coming. I was like, this is happening, isn't
No.
it? We're going to do the jorts thing, aren't we? Fucking hell.
John Cena, Tobias Funke.
It's a pretty good crowd. That's a pretty good group.
That's a very small
not bad
exclusive
company to
list.
keep.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll do
Oh,
a
man.
Ralph will coordinate. We'll do like a group thing.
Well,
I'll wear
Canadian
regular
tuxedo.
jeans and you can wear jorts, and we can do like a denim combo.
And we need someone with like 3/4 as well, just to kind of like, so it cascades down and we do a photo together.
And then
I think
Jenko
that
No,
jeans,
I
like
can-
the big, like with a dragon on the side.
No, it's you guys have to go as Brittany and Justin in the all jeans.
Oh, in the denim.
In the
Oh,
all
the
denim.
true
That's in
denim
right now.
actually.
Brittany
Yeah.
and Justin are in right now.
that would
so
be
that's
hot.
cool.
We could sell a calendar on that for sure if we did that.
The
For
FPS
sure.
calendar.
It would be super hot.
We have real things to talk about.
We do.
Not
I
to
don't
get.
know. I'm fine to talk about George for the next 2.5 hours.
This is,
That
welcome to the Jorts
works for me.
cast. We can do a deep dive. Yeah, review. I want to game review Jorts.
Yep.
This is a busy episode. It's a catch up because I was gone last week. I was sick.
Whoa, we
so,
missed
we
you.
have a lot of games to talk about. We have a fantastic interview with Kyle Rowley and Sam Lake, the co-directors of Alan Wake 2. And we also are going to jump into our first topic regarding Bungie and Destiny. If you don't play Destiny, I'd say stick around, specifically because it's about the state of the industry. We've talked a lot in the past about layoffs. It's been a big trend this year. Despite so many great games and successes, layoffs have been a major thing. And most recently, Bungie is victim of that. Bungie has cut an estimated 100 jobs.
8 to 10% of the whole studio.
And that is significant. And I think the community has taken note, and people have been very not happy about this. A lot of people are questioning, like, well, what's Destiny now? There's so much to dive into with this, but Ralph, I know you've been like following along with it, like to the letter as soon as it started coming out.
Yeah.
What's your like top level takeaway?
Yeah, look, it's like it's very bruising, I guess I would say, because I think with Destiny, the people who play Destiny are very invested in the people who make it in the studio, because I think Bungie themselves invite that. Like, they talk about the studio as a family, and they put themselves out there, and they're very values driven, right? So this is not just some mechanical corporation that produces a piece of software and puts it out. Like, it's a relationship that you have with the studio, and it's a relationship that dates all the way back to Halo for most of us, and even before that, you know, Marathon and like all that sort of stuff before. So, yeah, like it's like when you see this sort of stuff happen, you're like, oh, that is disappointing on its own, on spec, on its face value. But then you think about the way that it's happened, the fact that, you know, Sony acquired the studio and apparently earmarked $1 billion for employee retention, and then boom, like 100 people get sacked. You hear about the fact that the studio, like CEO Pete Parsons, 2 weeks ago said, we are missing our targets by 45%, which is a whole other discussion. And he kind of rallied the troops, like, we're going to get through this, we're going to weather the storm together. And apparently staff were really up for that fight. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, 100 of you are being made redundant. It's like, well, you don't have that discussion first and rally the troops and get everyone on board for that fight, and then sack them, you know? And then Pete Parsons comes out, CEO, and he's like, oh, it's such a sad day for Bungie. If anyone has any roles, please hire these people. It's like, bro, you are the one that just sacked them. You are not the person to be saying this right now. And then it also came out that there was another all-hands meeting, or I'm not sure if it was a meeting or an email or whatever, but Pete Parsons said, you know, post these redundancies, oh, we kept the right people to manage Destiny 2. And that's so hurtful to all of the people that were exited, you know? So there's a lot there that just kind of, all of these things pile up, and they just make you feel like, man, that fucking sucks. But I think for me personally, the exit of Michael Salvatore was like the really big thing, because if anyone doesn't know, he's the lead composer on Destiny and has been for a long time now. He's responsible for so much of its incredible music, and he was sacked. Like, he was, and it's kind of like,
how's that
if
work?
you're that good at your job and you've been there for that long, and even you get made redundant, then what the fuck, man?
His email was so
it was very
classy. Like, he could have really ripped them a new one.
Totally.
And hats off to that guy. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
things,
it just,
things like that too. Like, I don't even know how a lot of the process works, but like, what's the game plan for stuff like that? Are they going to have the interns make music? Are they going to go to audiojungle.com and download the music? Like, how to, even not just in terms of him, but just the fact that, like, Ralph, to your point, how it's a very front facing company, a communicative company, and communications and social media and community management people have been laid off. So it's like,
yes, totally.
Yeah.
What's the plan here?
Well, to be clear, there are other composers still on the team, so the music will still get made, and there are other community people still. Yeah. So it's not like they've gutted all these functions and then it's just like not going to happen or be outsourced. Like, there's still people there doing their jobs, but at a reduced capacity. And the people that were let go were clearly very talented, and it's kind of like, those people could have been redeployed toward another end. You know, they didn't need to lose. And we talk about like 45% missing a forecast. It's like, well, what was that fucking forecast? Like, what the hell?
Did
you know
the people
what I mean?
who got that forecast, like, did anything happen in that?
Say it again, sorry?
Did the people who put together that forecast, do they
get sacked? Is Pete Parsons taking a pay cut? I doubt it. You know what I mean? Like, it's the standard sort of. And I get these comments as well from people. They're like, well, this just happens everywhere. Why the fuck are you whinging? It's like, well, the fact that it happens everywhere is kind of the problem. Like, you know what I mean? It's just really shitty and disappointing, especially given the fact that $3.6 billion for purchase price for this studio, $1 billion earmarked for retention 12 months ago, and immediately jobs are gone when Destiny is, like, you know, struggling. And it does open up questions about the future of the game, about what Bungie's long-term plans are. Are they looking to sunset Destiny, not in an immediate sense, but maybe it becomes something they put on life support. Maybe they view it as a legacy franchise. Maybe it's something like Star Wars, The Old Republic, for example, which is still maintained, but in a very basic sense. You know what I mean? This is all speculation, by the way. No one knows how Bungie plan to approach this. Anything that will happen will not happen soon because Destiny 2 is still Bungie's cash cow. They need it to make money. But at the same time, it's like, well, what's their long-term intentions for Destiny 2? And I think these job cuts really reframe out the potential for what that future might be, you know? So yeah, it's tough. I think everyone's pretty bummed about it. Everyone's unsure of the future of Destiny. Everyone's very pissed off at how Bungie has handled it. And yeah, it's a very, very tough time for Destiny fans for sure.
Well,
do you think? I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, Ralph. There was a report a couple days ago that folks are canceling their pre-orders of the newest DLC expansion pack for Destiny 2.
Expansion. Yeah, expansion.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I imagine that can't be good for the overall.
I mean,
people that are still there.
Yeah, I think those sorts of things are always very tiny blips in the overall percentage of how a game is going to sell versus not sell, you know? And it's I think it more speaks to a broader community sentiment rather than, now the game's not going to sell well. No, the game will still sell a lot. It's the concluding saga for Destiny 2. But, you know, I do believe that there's been a notable shift in community sentiment, and that I think is the most important metric, because those really rusted on people are the people that wrangle in their friends to say, hey, come back and let's play the expansion together. And if they're not up for it, then that is going to have flow-on impacts. And just overall morale and engagement is so important for a live service game. You need to maintain that momentum. And this has definitely taken a lot of wind out of the sails. So, yeah.
Who did you speak to for this next upcoming piece then?
Yes, so we're about to come to an interview that we recorded earlier. Oh, I haven't actually recorded this yet, by the way, sorry. So we're recording this tomorrow, but we're going to splice it in through the magic of editing. But we're going to chat with 3 content creators. One guy named MyNameIsByf, who is kind of like the lore master general for Destiny 2. There's a guy named Aztecross, who does broad coverage and commentary, really fantastic at what he does. And there's also a guy named Datto, who's kind of like the proto Destiny content creator from the very beginning, and he's often served as kind of like the voice of the community in a roundabout way, and his perspectives on things has always been very valued and sought out. So yeah, 3 very very good content creators, people who are never afraid to be critical of Bungie, but also have a lot of love for the studio and the game. And yeah, we are about to sit down with them now. And again, I don't know how that chat's going to go because we haven't done it yet, but this will be it. So yeah, there you go. Okay, well, here we are. I'm joined now by Datto, Byf and Aztecross. First of all, gents, can I say it's really great to see you? We were just saying before the call I've spoken with Byf and Datto many times before. It's actually the very first time I've been able to speak to Cross. So, dude, great to meet you finally. It's awesome. I wish it was under better circumstances, of course.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, really good to see you guys. And thank you for making the time. Obviously, big moment in the Destiny community. And I guess we've sort of already recounted that in the previous section of the podcast. Wanted to ask your initial kind of reactions to everything that's gone down. Like when you saw this news, what were you thinking? Like what was the first thing going through your mind? So Datto, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, when I first got up and was checking my phone and everything, I saw that a couple people were being laid off, and I was like, oh, sucks. Sounds like a couple people from Bungie getting laid off. I didn't really think too much of it, but then as you know, that first 15 minutes turned into the first hour, 2 hours, I was like, oh, this is serious stuff. This isn't just like a couple people getting laid off from a thing. This is like a whole deal. And I was a little bit surprised because I don't feel like we've ever seen something like this really happen with Bungie or the people working on Destiny.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a surprise, even though I knew that population's down a little bit. Okay. But we've had that happen before and it's never been a huge deal. So.
Yeah. Byf.
I got to agree. You know, coming out of it and looking at what was happening first, you don't really know what the shock is like. But I think it was the moment when I saw that Liana had been laid off from the community team, where I was like, oh, hold on a second, expletives have hit the fan. And
Sure.
you know, Datto and I are some of the few people who have been doing this for close to a decade now, and it's at this moment in time where I think we've seen just about every single kind of drama within a live service game that you can imagine, and everything under the sun that has happened. And this was a moment where I think, for me personally, at first I was very much sitting in that place of, I don't want to, you know, dramatize anything that's going on, because this could just be another, you know, episode in Destiny's story, so to speak. You know, this could just be another moment that the community is going to remember, and it's going to suck, clearly, but I don't know how bad this is going to be. 4 days later, I think it's hitting me that this is an entirely different kind of event within the community, and much as I am one to sit there and normally say, okay, it's fine, we'll weather the storm, this does feel different, and that's scary. Terrifying, honestly.
Yeah. Cross.
Yeah, I was actually taking a nap. I was out the night before. I came in, I was taking a nap, and then I just happened to roll over and pull up Twitter, and I'm seeing like, all right, somebody got laid off, and I was like, there's another person, just what? And then I'm just scrolling through, and it's just like everyone. I'm like, what is going on? And then that's when the other news hit that I think it was Jason Schreier's article about Final Shape being delayed, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta get out of bed right now. I gotta figure out what's going on, and we immediately went live to go see. But yeah, this has never happened before. Not like this. I mean, we've seen developers come and go, right? But this is a completely different animal.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that like it feels quite different because of the relationship that we have with Bungie as a studio, and the way that they kind of invite a very personal connection to that studio through the way they talk, through the sort of the values that they put up in lights. And so when something like this happens, it feels, yeah, you really kind of feel it in a way that you don't feel it with a lot of other companies. And again, I think it's not just because we are fans of this game. I think it's because of the way this studio is and how it puts itself out there, you know? Yeah. So does an event like this kind of change how you feel about Bungie? Do you see Bungie in a different light now post this event than before? Or is it kind of, yeah, do you know what I mean?
I mean, now that we kind of know some more details, like, you know, maybe who is responsible. I talked about this in a video that I talked about, this nebulous upper management, Illuminati, whatever's going on at Bungie. Like, without someone to like focus, like, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you allow people to do that? And blah, blah, blah. Like, without more of that information, it's just kind of like, I've just been more sympathetic to the employees of Bungie, as opposed to like, there's like the people who work at Bungie, and then there's Bungie core, you know? Sure. And, you know, I've just kind of felt more sympathy for the employees because they're still just trying to make the best game that they possibly can. And I know that they're trying to do that. So it's just tough to evaluate all those things with still so many missing bits of information.
For sure.
It's going to sound really odd to throw it out there, but I think in previous instances when something has gone wrong with Destiny, with this community in particular, the word grieve has been used. I know that when it came to Forsaken and talking about the changes from D1 to D2, it's something you even used in your review, Ralph. But when it comes to this and watching people that some of us might consider colleagues, some of us might consider acquaintances, and some of us might even consider friends being laid off, it really is the moment of grieving. And I think that the result of that has been, as Datto has said, you know, this massive uproar against effectively the Bungie executives. And I think the real knock-on for that of everyone in the community is that the executives are now that separate group. Before, I think that people would have looked at Bungie as kind of a homogenous unit, you know? When Bungie did something, it was the whole company that was speaking on behalf of everything. It may have been Cosmo or Liana, or back in the day it would have been Deej and Urk delivering the message, but ultimately Bungie was saying it as a whole with their chest. And now it seems as though that line has been drawn between the executive blob and everyone else who works there. And you desperately want one group to succeed, and you're desperately, furiously angry at the other. It's a division that perhaps should have always existed because, I mean, it's a company. But by that same token, it feels as though it's only becomes starkly apparent at this moment now, especially now that we know that certain decisions on the executive level were holding back things that the community really wanted.
Yes, and of course, interesting to note that when asked whether executives would see any change in their remuneration, they said that is not currently being considered. Yep. How funny. I think one thing that really struck me, I think the thing that kind of struck me the hardest in this whole thing was like Michael Salvatore being let go. Cross, when you heard about that news, what were your thoughts on that?
I thought that was it for any future content after Final Shape.
Really?
That's kind of what that told me. It's like, all right, if you're not keeping him, then are we just not going to get any more big annual expansion set pieces, right? Is it just going to be episodes? And this obviously led me to just start, speculating like crazy, into is Marathon the new baby? Is that the direction Bungie's going to go? And I even put out a video on it, but I since took it down because I was trying to find who's the bad guy here. And I was like, maybe it's Marathon. Maybe that's taking all the attention away. When in reality, it's probably not, right? Like it's probably what we've not seen before, which is this divide between executives. And I think Paul Tassi put out that article too, where, the chain of the command, they were trying to put things into the game and they were putting up the chain of command, but it was getting shot down. That's painful to read. That's painful to see. And then Salvatore going, I just have to assume the worst at that, or at least initially I assumed the worst. At this point, I really don't know. I really don't know what that future is. I don't want to get too ahead right now.
Yeah. I think episodes still will definitely be, like, episode 1 is definitely going to be a thing. Like, they have to have something immediately after. And I do think episodes 2 and 3 are going to also eventually be a thing. But I think Bungie's still trying to figure out, like, what are we doing next? Like, are we gonna have expansions? Like, are we gonna tap into a new 10-year story? Is it gonna be a 5-year story? Is it gonna be a 3-year story? Are we gonna tell smaller stories? Like, they're still probably figuring out the next big cosmic threat in the game, and I think that's where some of that uncertainty is also coming from. Is like, they don't probably even know yet.
Yeah. And perhaps even if they did know, this event is seismic. I mean, the way that it was described by both Jason Schreier and Paul Tassi, some departments have been almost entirely wiped out, which makes you sit there and wonder, okay, so if there are plans that were put in place, do they now need to be either benched or reworked entirely? What does the land look like? Nobody is going to know until the actual damage assessment at Bungie is done. And even then, they're going to have to navigate that. They're not going to tell us what that terrain necessarily looks like, because we're only worried about the destination. And at this point, the people who have to make that trek, aka the developers. So,
sure. Yeah. Well, definitely want to come to the sort of future looking stuff at some point in the conversation. For now, though, kind of want to look at like where Destiny is right now, because I mean, does this feel different? Does this time around, because obviously Destiny's had its highs and lows and whatever else, but does this moment in terms of like Destiny's overall health and its trajectory, does this moment feel different than other moments before? What have you sensed from your communities as you've been like, out there?
I mean, I don't. Someone else talk first. I've been talking first this whole time.
I will say normally this time of the year, like I'm already gearing up my first or second Destiny's dying video. I've got the same copy pasta thumbnail and with the graph going down. It's too real to even make that video this year. Like it's just one of those things where, I saw it probably as early as the final shape reveal. Whereas like last year when Lightfall was revealed, everybody was rushing to pre-order. Everybody was hyped. And you were coming off the high of Witch Queen, and then Lightfall being that Infinity War pitch. And so there was no convincing. There was no talking. I mean, everybody saw the trailer and everybody's like, I want it. But the final shape, everyone was still very skeptical. Even though there was some juicy stuff shown to us, everyone was still very skeptical. And then, the landscape this past year, just so many other options, right? Even in September alone, so many other games to play. October really, really dipped. I've actually, enjoyed this past season. I've enjoyed even Festival of the Lost. But, there's a lot of people that have definitely dipped out of Destiny, and they just kind of tune in to see what's happening, whether that's just like news, Twitter, or TWABs, right?
Yeah.
I think you touch on it there, Cross, and I completely agree. It's weird. This is actually the most played season I have this year. I looked back through my Guardian rank, commendation score, all the different metrics of how long I've played, and yeah, this is the most played season. And I think it's fair to say that prior to everything that happened this week, things weren't looking brilliant, but they were at least trending in a somewhat positive direction. You were having certain teasers of things like the PvP Strike team coming up. The next season had some promising things that would be delivered. It was a slow upwards trajectory, but it was at least positive. And that dynamic, and the dynamic of how things are going in Destiny generally, has cratered now. Again, that sounds like a dramatic word, but I think it revolves around the central issue of trust. And you can skin that metaphorical cat 15 different ways, but ultimately it comes down to the idea that people do not necessarily trust that Destiny in its current form, or in a form that people will want to play, will be around. That's based on executives, that's based on the revenue losses. There is no trust. Everyone is tired.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, Datto, you want to say something?
No, you go.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, because obviously Destiny's been around for a while now, and it's natural that a game would sort of like decline in popularity over time, because that's what happens. We play something for a long time, and then we kind of, want to play other things. Do you think that the current state of Destiny is a result of that kind of general, like, hey, we've been doing this for a while now, or do you think it's because of some specific kind of missteps and decisions and problems within the game that have built up over time to produce this outcome?
It's probably a lot of things all stacking on top of each other. Like, I don't think there's one specific catalyst. Some people might point to Lightfall as being, like, this was the point where things fell apart. And I still think Lightfall gameplay wise, I know people have issue with the story, but gameplay wise, I still think it was pretty solid. Like, the Legend campaign was good. My hot take for season 21 was that it's going to be one of the better reviewed seasons when we go look back on it. Season 22 also is kind of following that path. I kind of expect this year of seasons to actually be some of the best seasons that we're going to get if we just look at them as like a individual season by season basis. But I think a lot of it is just fatigue. I think it's just things haven't changed enough that people are just kind of tired. And it's also the fact that this year is one of the best years for gaming since the year 2000, basically. Yeah. So you have so many more options, and you have a fan base that's incredibly, incredibly fatigued on the game. Even if the game itself is not in the worst state in the world, it's just people being tired, people wanting something a little fresher in the game. And that's kind of where I've been. It's like I don't get anything out of seasonal activity. They're never gonna make enough stuff for someone like me, where I'm just crushing Grandmaster Nightfalls like they're nothing, right? They're never gonna have enough for someone like me. So a seasonal activity, I'm gonna tune out. But everybody else is a little bit different, and I think it just depends on how you enjoy the game and what you enjoy about the game that is causing some problems.
Yeah.
I'm going to make reference to something that is infamous in the Destiny community, and I might cause a little controversy here, but there is the GDC talk that was given after Witch Queen. I want to say it was something like June or July 2022. And there are some rather infamous slides that were taken from that. Things such as, be careful not to overdeliver, you're creating patterns. I don't want to suggest that that is the entire reason why everything has gone downhill. In fact, I think there are actually points from that GDC talk which hit true and just haven't necessarily been delivered on by Bungie. For example, the trust first, then retention, then revenue slide, I think is actually the right way you do a live service game. It's just trust first seems to have been sort of pushed to the back. The
Sure.
major thing about don't over-deliver, you're creating patterns, in my mind, is not this idea that Bungie is content to give us a subpar amount of content for every season, just enough to keep us around. It's actually the idea that experimentation and dramatic evolution and things that would genuinely change Destiny and perhaps keep players engaged and interested have been benched in favor of meeting the requirements for the season and then allowing people to potentially push those further down the road to a point at which it's no longer seen as some dramatic innovation, it's just another part of Destiny's slow and iterative process. I think that's contributed a lot to the way that burnout has happened within the player base. I think it's contributed to this idea that Destiny is not evolving quickly enough. It's made things feel stagnant. And it's a problem, not just because that leaves it in a state where it doesn't feel like it's evolving, but also because this is actually a way that Bungie has built their entire studio. It's the mindset of how do you deliver consistent live service content. To their credit, they've done that well as far as the actual cadence of delivery is concerned. But now it's no longer about the quantity and the regularity of content. It's about the actual proof in the pudding, the tasting, the stuff that is being delivered to us. I think that's part of what's making it all fall apart at the moment.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the GDC. I mean, that's a great point, Byf. I've got, friends that are, they love Destiny or loved Destiny. And when I first saw the GDC panel, we broke it down and I was like, okay, I see the business aspects. I understand that who Bungie was talking to, who their audience was. Like they're trying to give you this flow chart essentially of how to, run a live game. But majority of other people, when they see it, they immediately lost trust. A lot of my friends that were diehard Destiny fans, when they saw it, they immediately lost trust in Bungie. And so that's been kind of an uphill battle because there's been so many things that have happened since then to show that you're in that revenue cycle, right? Especially with the monetization going up. And so there seems to be no trust there.
Sure.
So yeah, and as far as what are the things contributing to the decline of Destiny? I like Datto says, so many things. I mean, so many options of games this past year. Also, you could say diminishing of loot, and whether that's RNG or versus crafted weapons.
Power creep.
Yeah,
well.
power creep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You still have players that are saying the game's not hard enough, right? And then all of a sudden you have players that are like, the game's too hard, right? And so there's a constant balance and but yeah, I would say that the player base is fatigued in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of contributing factors, and it's really hard to just narrow down on one.
For sure. I as well like. Sorry, Byf. You go.
Just really quickly to jump in on that. The thing that's really tragic about this is that in that GDC talk, they also describe part of the reason behind not creating patterns and not over-delivering. And part of the reason for it, supposedly, is they don't want people to push for something excellent in case it creates an accidental crunch culture. And it speaks to something which is more insidious within the industry generally. But it's also one of these scary moments where if we as a community are going to sit here and say that we care about the way that the devs at Bungie are being treated, we also need to acknowledge the idea that risks sometimes need to be taken, people are going to need time to recharge, and that occasionally those risks aren't going to work, which is the scariest territory for Bungie to be in, but I feel like that's the territory they have to occupy.
I totally agree. I think something that people definitely overlook about the whole over delivery thing as well. It's been a minute since I've watched it. I need to go back and watch it, but I do think a small part of it as well is just making sure that the amount of stuff you're able to make doesn't cause your company to have to go into crunch mode.
I agree. Yeah,
and
that was kind of my biggest takeaway from what that.
I think that is definitely lost on a lot of people. It's like we see so much about like, Company X had to crunch 80 hours a week to get this game out the door, and they had to do it for 6 months. But then, like, you're also like, but also make more stuff. Like,
totally.
It's a tough balance.
But I do think, and I think to Bungie's credit, I think they've been really good about putting the message out there about like they care about their people, and that's why this is what I came back to earlier. Like they're a studio that talks about how they care about their people, and so they have talked about crunch, and they talked about we don't do that anymore, and they've talked about like work-life balance, and they talked about remote working, right? So clearly they've taken a lot of the right steps to avoid having to crunch their staff, and I think the player base has also responded to that. And I think most people who are truly engaged in Destiny are like, good, we like that you are not treating your staff poorly. And again, that also makes it it has a bigger impact on us when all of a sudden 100 of those staff are then sacked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I see just from an outsider, because I am part of the Destiny community, obviously, but also I moonlight across a lot of other communities by virtue of what I do, right? And definitely one of the things that I see is that, like, when you talk about Destiny externally, everyone fucking hates Destiny. They hate it. You know what I mean? They really do. And every Reddit thread, Twitter post, whatever, there is just this like visceral hatred of Destiny, and Bungie as well. And just this deep distrust of who they are as a company, and like their business practices and all that sort of stuff. And I see that, and I'm just like, that really sucks. You know what I mean? That really bums me out when I see that, because I'm like, I get a lot of what these people are saying, because I see like content vaulting, for example, and it's like, I totally get like that sucks objectively on many levels. I understand Bungie's justification for it. It relates to what we just talked about in terms of like managing workflow and people and whatever else. But for so many people, that's just like a red line. Obviously, there was sunsetting of stuff before. There's the increasing monetization of Destiny, the FOMO stuff. There's just this thing where it's so hard to talk about Destiny externally. And I do think that one of the reasons why Destiny is in a tricky spot right now is that it's really hard to be able to have conversations about Destiny externally and welcome people into the game, because most of the time they're just like, no, I've heard so many bad things about it. You know what I mean? Am I making point with sense?
No, dude. Anytime something bad happens with Destiny, r/games on Reddit is all over.
Totally.
They're all over it. Everyone's all over it all the time. But like, anytime something good happens, it's just crickets.
Sure.
You know?
And I wonder what Bungie can really... I wonder what Bungie can do to turn that narrative around, you know? Because I think it's so core to the success of the game long term. You know what I mean? I look at something like Final Fantasy XIV, which just has this incredible relationship with its community, and it's been able to continue to ride that and build that over time. And it creates this goodwill in the market where people are invited in to test that game, even though the barrier to entry to that game, by the way, is like 400 hours of content to be able to get to the current expansion.
Don't even get me started, bro. Don't even get me started.
So here's the thing, though. It's 400 hours of content, but how many dollars is that?
Well, the first 300 hours are literally free.
Exactly.
So.
And there's,
first 300 hours are also just cutscenes and walking around.
That's true.
I hope you're ready for 300 hours.
We won't get into that.
I'm not going to go into it.
But let me make put this way. Obviously, there's some bigger long-term journey stuff that needs to happen with Destiny. We'll talk about that in a second. But do you think there are any kind of like quick interventions that Bungie could make in the near term, in the next 3 to 6 months, that are really going to move the needle on where things are at right now, either internally or with the Destiny players, or externally? Like, do you see anything like that, or is it more long-term pitches?
I think, I don't know, they've been so reluctant. To me, like, the number one thing you can do is reduce barrier to entry and like reduce a lot of the stigma of like, the game's so expensive to get into. Like, if you wait for a sale, it's not that bad. But if you're just like wanting to be like, I want to get into Destiny, and you go look at like all the things that you need to buy compared to like how like relevant they are or well received they are, like, I'm not going to tell someone to spend $25 on the Shadowkeep campaign. Why is Shadowkeep still $25? Right? Is that built? And yes, I know millions of dollars of research has gone into maximizing how much you should charge for a thing to get the money back. But like, you need to start building some goodwill with everyone. Let's make some stuff cheaper. And then otherwise, like, short term, I don't know. You need to give people more access to the game. More, like, people like stuff, you know? People like getting stuff for free. They like getting stuff for cheap. So I think that would be like an interesting start, but it's also just so far into the franchise. And like it's literally the equivalent of watching, you know, the final Avengers movie and you haven't watched any other movie. It's like, how do you onboard those people?
So
yeah, sure.
I think it comes back to some bigger cultural changes too. But I mean, it start with what was stated at the GDC talk: trust, then retention, then revenue. And, the way that expansions are priced out is just a microcosm of that, I feel. But as for what could change things immediately, I think that there's a really clear point to be made. And I am just going to throw this out there with the clear note that there is no expectation that this is going to happen, because this is typical corporate America for the most part. But the group that has lost trust is not the actual developers at Bungie, it is the executive team. And the problem with that then means that they are the ones who need to act and prove that they have regained not just the trust of the community, but also, of course, of the developers underneath them. And there are ways to do that, but I don't believe that anyone on the executive team is going to do it, because they had the chance when it came to the choice of whether to lay people off or cut their own salaries, and they elected not to cut their own salaries, which I'd remind people, at very least in the video game industry, is not unprecedented. Satoru Iwata, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the late president and CEO of Nintendo, which again has not always been perfect, but back in the time when the Wii U was not selling, he cut his salary in half for 5 months so that no one underneath him needed to be laid off. And that's a leadership decision. It's leading from the front. It's getting in the trenches next to everyone else who's working there. And it's actually doing something that is a tangible show of, I am taking responsibility for the errors that land at my feet. I am not passing the buck. This has to be something that I think is considered at very least, if not done. And I know it's probably never going to happen because, that's just not how this stuff works out. But it's not the developers at Bungie that need to earn back players' trust. It's the executives. It's everyone who decides how much Shadowkeep is getting priced for, 5 years down the line? It's the people who are responsible for $10 shader bundles. This is the kind of stuff that's going to change it. It's cultural. It's not a game development and design decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, looking forward in terms of, let's talk about Final Shape now, because Cross, you mentioned earlier that when Final Shape reveal happened, you, or at least your community, wasn't really feeling it. What was your response to the Final Shape reveal? Like, was that something? Was it like firing on all cylinders, or what were you feeling about the first time you saw it?
I mean, I'm always hyped for more content, right?
Sure.
I just looking though. I got chat here on the side, and I'm like watching everybody, and so I could definitely see the skepticism from a lot of people. But as far as like what Final Shape's going to bring, I think a lot of people, myself included, got baited into thinking that a new subclass was coming. Although, let's be frank, for Bungie to have given us a new subclass, back to back, that would have been a hell of a feat. And who knows? Maybe the pushback to June could possibly do that. I don't know. It's a tight window for sure. But
that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah. But I at this point where I'm at is I'm finishing this out. I want to kill the witness. I am engaged with this story. I wish the story would have been, not chopped up over so many seasons but we go catch a Byf video and get on board with it before the launch of Final Shape. And then hopefully everybody knows what the hell is going on.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. People have sat there and said that, hey, even if I stopped playing Destiny, I still come back to get the story wrap from you. So, haha, it's great. That feels fantastic.
I feel like the number one thing all Destiny creators hear whenever there's like a meet and greet or a convention is like, hey, man, used to watch your videos all the time. Number one thing.
Oh,
brutal.
Used to watch you all the time, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it.
Yeah.
But also, oh, man, that is telling.
I think the consensus of what I was seeing throughout people in the comment sections of my content whenever something to do with Final Shape's reveal came up was simply the idea of, I am not underwhelmed, I'm not overwhelmed, I am whelmed. This was about what we expected, somewhere on par, but it does not blow me away. And for the culmination of 10 years worth of games to be there, I mean, yeah, I think that it shows that the choice to delay is actually quite a prudent one. It's a very good idea. But it sucks to be there. This is meant to be our end game moment, I'm just praying for a moment in the campaign at some point where you sit there and you have a moment where you hear on your left in your ear or some equivalent thereof, and you have that point at which it makes it feel as though these 10 years have been worth it. And at current, I mean, trailers aren't the actual game, but it's hard to imagine that we'll get there. Of course, everyone in the studio has been saying that, hey, they're going to work to make it great. They're going to do some fantastic stuff. And when it comes from a dev, I believe them, but the excitement is not very much there in the same way it was for things like Witch Queen.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I believe that they're going to try. I don't believe just yet that it's going to be, super, super insane as much as I want it to be. But yeah.
Were you guys surprised at that statement that Bungie just put out about Final Shape and about like needing to hit that quality bar? Like that came as a bit of a shock to me, because I think, we hadn't really heard them talk at all about any of the challenges with Final Shape, and all of a sudden they put out a statement being like, we know this needs to be as good as Forsaken and Taken King, etc. Like, was that a bit of a shock?
I mean, given the recent circumstances, not really. But I think they were just trying to whip up anything in the short term to try to, reassure people that they're going to be trying their butts off to make it something really special. I wasn't really expecting a whole lot from them, like in their Thursday update at all. That was the most I was expecting, of just like, hey, we know everything's on fire. We're also on fire. So we're going to extinguish each other first, and then we will come talk to you. So that's all I was expecting. But I don't know. It doesn't really surprise me too much, but we've also heard this kind of talk before, like so many times over.
Yeah, that was definitely something that came back from, again, online discussion, where everyone's like, even people who don't play Destiny were like, I have never played a single moment of Destiny, but I feel like I've read this statement from Bungie 5 times now. You know what I mean?
You have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it does make it difficult. So I mean, what do you guys feel? Because obviously there's the story beat that really needs to land with Final Shape for it to, like, that big thud, cool, we did it, the witness is down, and it felt really good to do it. What else do you think the Final Shape really needs to deliver as an expansion outside of that to sort of like get the franchise back on track? Cross, what are you hoping for, man?
Oh man, dude, that's such a loaded one, right? This is one of those things. Like I visited this topic a while back, and I just kind of conceded. I was like, I'm at the point where I'm out of ideas, really.
Right? Interesting.
How to really, there's some MMO aspects that I feel like, Bungie could be doing, and you see that with like loadouts this past year. You see that with in-game LFG coming. My PvP community right now is still like, down with airborne effectiveness. You know what I mean?
Well, you have a PvP community? There's a PvP community still playing this game? What?
Oh, definitely.
It's slightly bigger than the Gambit community.
That's brutal.
But
they're not even here to defend themselves.
Stop! He's already dead.
Yeah.
I just want to be wowed, and at this point, I don't really know what WoW is. At this point. It being 10 years at going into Final Shape, like I'm not sure. But in the past, I didn't even know what WoW was. But we get surprised, like the Whisper mission, right? Like there are moments we've had Forsaken to where we've been wowed. Someone brought up yesterday, they were like, I wish Witch Queen wasn't that standard bearer. But I think there was a lot of things that Witch Queen did right. I felt like scope wise, it was really good, and weapon crafting was a really big thing that Bungie brought to us, but for better or for worse, because there's still people that claim that ruined Destiny, not being an RNG based game. But at this point, I just concede. I give it to developers, and I say, please wow us.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with Cross on this one. I have no idea what they could possibly do, but it's why the experimentation and the willingness to take a risk is so important. If we're going to jump on that weapon crafting point, it was a risk. And you know what? Experimenting with something like that and throwing it in the game and committing to it is a ballsy move. And when it pays off, you have fantastic results. I also think, at very least, I should say this because I'm the lore nerd in this community. Narratively speaking, there are definitely some tracks they can follow. I think if they take a look at some of the highest moments within Destiny's narrative, things like, for me at very least, Season of the Chosen, Season of the Splicer, Witch Queen. These are examples of when Destiny's story wasn't just bombastic and excellent, but it was also really nuanced, you know? This wasn't just a cookie-cutter villain who is there to do bad things nebulously. There were purposes behind the characters, and there were complex interactions between them and others based on backstory and culture. And perhaps most importantly of all, they brought the deep lore that Destiny is known for into the forefront and made it tangible. And it made it exciting. For me, that's very important, but I think that we need to take that to the 11th degree if we're going to do any of this. The reality is that Destiny's universe has plenty of stories left in it. That's just narratively speaking a fact. We could have an entire game which just returns to the Cabal homeworld and reclaims it from the Hive God of War. I mean, a god versus an empress sounds like a great storyline, but Destiny needs to sell us on those ideas. The game needs to compel us towards those plot points, and it needs to be exciting. So, is it capable of doing these things? I mean, there is potential, but it needs to be properly expressed, and I think, again, we need trust and faith that it's going to get there.
Yeah. I from the gameplay side of things, I don't know. I thought Season 21's activity where they start to get into roguelite type things, I thought that was a really cool idea. I would love to see more unique modes like that, tapping into other genres, coming out with like new core playlist stuff or just new activities in general. I've always been wanting like a competitive PvE thing. Like where is my competitive PvE Trials equivalent thing? You know, I like that's what I think they need to be experimenting with is just more options. You look at some of these other games from the past, you look at something like StarCraft, you look at something like Fortnite, you look at something like Overwatch, where people are able to come up with their own custom game modes and essentially put them into the game. I'm not asking for Bungie to all of a sudden, you know, open up the equivalent of Forge, because I imagine that is not what the game was designed for, but providing a wider breadth of like activities to go try to pursue and perfect your craft in and your skill. I would love to see more of that, just more stuff to aspire to. But yeah, my expectations for Final Shape was just like, I just want like a Witch Queen level campaign, just like dialed up another 50%. That's all I was really expecting. Like, we're at the end of the story. Let's just conclude the story. Let's have it be a banger. And then episodes is like, all right, where are we going to iterate now? Like, I just want a solid ending to this game. But then like, exactly. It's like, how are you going to convince people to stick around?
If I can...
Yeah, well, I guess that's... Sorry, Byf, go on.
Yeah, really quickly to pick up on that. I know that you said you're not expecting Bungie to drop Forge, but I think you bring up a great point there, which is that community-created and user-created content is a boon to games that have it. StarCraft 2 may have been well past its heyday, but there are still people who play that game because of the arcade. There are still moments where the arcade, which is where you can create very intricate custom games within that engine, has come to light and has driven its own communities. There are games within that game. That's how complex and deep it gets. Take a look at any other large title that you've got out nowadays. Take it and think of, say, Fortnite or Roblox or anything that is genuinely huge, even things like Minecraft, which has been around for years. And you have this one common element, which is that you make it very easy for players to create their own content. And I think that if any live service is going to look to the future to help fill content gaps, you're going to probably want to look at something that allows players to express themselves within this universe more effectively. That, I think, is a big point that needs to be hit in the future. And it's crazy to me that it's something that wasn't brought forward from Halo, because Bungie made Forge, and before Forge was a thing in Halo, it was a thing in Marathon. You know, it was in Marathon Infinity. Forge came out. For sure. The OG.
Yeah. I know how a massive of an undertaking that would be to implement in the current iteration of Destiny.
3 years of work.
Absolutely. You're right. Exactly.
No
like,
question.
it's basically the equivalent of its own game at that point that they
exactly.
would need to do, which is just, you know, how do you even cram that in?
100%.
So thinking about, just like thinking into the future, like obviously Final Shape drops, expansion happens. What do you think is actually realistically the future of Destiny? Like if you're a betting person, would you say like, oh, Destiny continues to stay as it is now and it will, find a new audience and thrive? Or would you say, it just kind of like peters out slowly? Or is it like, it's going to be the same, man. It just stays like it is now for the next 10 years. It just keeps going. Like World of Warcraft, for example, it just finds a way to keep going. What are your predictions for what actually happens with Destiny 2 post Final Shape? Cross, what do you want to kick us off, Cross?
Yeah, so okay, Tuesday/Wednesday, I was just convinced that, we're gonna get the Final Shape, and then we're gonna get episodes, which is just gonna be essentially seasonal content, but and no more annual expansions. Marathon was gonna be the next big focus. And we wouldn't get an annual expansion for Destiny, and then all eyes would pretty much be on Marathon. And I think Bungie legitimately is going to just look at Marathon to see how well it does, but still keep the lights on for Destiny, of course. I know they've got other projects they're
Destiny
working on.
Destiny is what's keeping the lights on right now.
That's right. Destiny is what keeping the lights on, right? And how these other games do. I don't know how much that's going to play an effect on Destiny unless it's like some monster blow up, like Marathon becomes the greatest game ever made, right? And then obviously there's going to be a shift to that. The episodes thing, I don't know, because it's not exactly like we're entering sequel territory. There's definitely a lot of promises. That was probably the thing that everyone was most skeptical about. I don't think anyone was really that skeptical about Final Shape, being the ending that we hope it's going to be, right? I think a lot of people were just very skeptical about episodes because people were just like, all right, it's just going to be a 4-month long season, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of where Bungie is now. I could be completely surprised. They could turn around and be like, no, we got another annual expansion. We're doing this alongside Gummy Bears and Marathon, but good Lord, they're going to sleep. That's a lot happening in 2025.
Yeah.
I'm fully expecting a pretty significant drop off of players after Final Shape, and I don't think there's pretty much anything Bungie can do about those people. Like Final Shape could be the greatest thing that we've ever seen in the franchise. Some people just no matter what are going to be done. They're just, I don't care. I've been playing this game for 10 years. I'm moving on. Doesn't matter. And it could be 20%, I feel like is conservative. 15 to 20% is conservative. It could go up to 30, 40% of people dropping off. And so, I still think we get episodes, and I think they have a lot to prove with episodes and how those end up turning out. For me, the big struggle I think Bungie has ahead of them is just how do you onboard new people? How do you onboard people to a 10-year franchise that basically for the past 5 years only gets negative press? How do you do it? And it's also a game that you can't start from the beginning. You can't start it from the beginning.
You literally can't do it.
There's no way to do it. If you want to go back to Destiny 1, sure, you can start from Destiny 1. 3 years, and then you just have a gap.
Time jump.
You just black
and
out.
You're back
awake.
at the end. Yeah. So I think, as much as people hate the DCV, but also hopefully understand the need for it, I think if Bungie were able to figure out some way to allow people to play the whole game through, that would be a decent start. But they need to just wow the hell out of people in Final Shape, and then also the seasons. Maybe this expansion after Final Shape would be the new launching off point for a lot of people. I could see that, because episodes are going to be, I'm feeling like more of an epilogue type thing.
Yeah,
here's the things to like bring us to the new thing, right? It's the aftermath of Final Shape. We're going to wrap up a couple loose ends. Here's how it's affecting the world. And then we transition into here's the next new thing that's going to happen to the world. And that's where I feel like your new launching off point for a lot of people is going to be. It's going to be a fresh story. It's going to be a fresh, maybe new batch of characters. We don't know. I'm not going to say fresh start completely because we're still going to have all of our stuff, I imagine. But yeah, that's what I'm envisioning is just a very big drop off, and Bungie trying to figure out how to either bring people to the game or keep those people for a little while longer.
Sure.
So I think that there is... I think let's put it like this. I think that it is important to acknowledge where we sit within the community and just gaming's ecosystem generally, right? Which is the idea that anyone listening to this podcast, the people on this podcast, anybody who is immediately aware of this news is actually, strangely enough, and I know this is going to sound crazy to people who are here, it's actually a smaller proportion of people than the maximum number that are playing Destiny. And the reason for that is because there are so many people out there who are just playing it on the regular and just don't even know. There are people who don't read the TWAB, they don't watch YouTube videos, they don't talk about it on any social media, they've never even heard of the fact that they've
got lives. They're not like us. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So they've got real jobs, as they love to put
it. Yeah, they go outside. Exactly.
They touch grass. But the this is actually the major overwhelming point. I think that Datto, what you said about like 20% being conservative, yeah, something along those lines is pretty accurate, I think. And regardless of whether it ends up being, 30% or anything higher or lower, I think that there is still something to consider with the remaining 70, 60, 80, however many percentage it is. Because ultimately, it's the people who aren't reading the TWABs or TWIDs, whatever you want to call it nowadays. It's the people who aren't watching YouTube content. It's the people who aren't talking about this because they're not as engaged that ultimately keep this thing going. And that's something which is both a saving grace and a bit of a problem, because Bungie is going to lose a sizable portion of its core community. The evangelicists for this game, I guess is the way you'd put it. The people who would proselytize about how good Destiny is and the idea that people should try it. They're not necessarily going to lose their casual player base who might just stick around with the game because it's what they like to play. It's the thing they play to relax for an hour or two. Those are going to be the people that I think will ensure that Destiny is still around. But as far as its core within the actual gaming sphere, including content creators such as ourselves, that's the significant proportion of people that are probably going to call it quits at 10 years. And for a bunch of people, ourselves very much included, that's very worrying. So I think it really depends who you are. Destiny in itself is probably not going to go away, but its community is never going to look the same after this.
Would you guys want to see a Destiny 3? You reckon Bungie should do that? You reckon?
For completely selfish, just like number go up reasons, and maybe just for marketing purposes. But like, I don't know. I've had enough talks to be like, what is Destiny 3 like? What would Destiny 3 need to accomplish that they couldn't do in Destiny 2 right now? Like that's the thing to me is. What does it accomplish versus just continuing to iterate on the game? I get maybe for like technological, engineering, networking reasons, if they would want to be like, all right, we're pulling a CS2, we got to get off a source engine and over to source 2. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and do something like that. That is 100% understandable. But outside of those reasons, it'd be neat to see what they could do.
Yeah.
But I'm just not expecting to see anything along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see it anytime soon, but that doesn't mean that it won't happen. No. And
yeah,
I feel like I would like to see a Destiny 3, but as with anything, I'd love to see it done right. The studio has learned a lot of lessons ever since publishing Destiny 2, and the major problems that came along with everything that happened, losing all of our gear and then moving to different systems that maybe showed that some of the core understandings of what was and wasn't good about Destiny in the first place were missing. I think that Bungie is, and I know this is going to perhaps be a very unpopular comment, I think Bungie is wiser than it was however many years ago, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the time imminently for Destiny 3. I think that assuming people get through Final Shape and assuming that Bungie can right the ship, think about the future, maybe think about Marathon, maybe then, as things continue to pivot, think about the reasons why Destiny 3 should exist, and then try and push that boat out. There's a group of people that will be here for it, and I'm sure I may include myself in that if I'm fortunate enough to be around. I don't mean to be too doom and gloom, but YouTube's scary. right now.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
it's just one of those things where it's got to be under the right circumstances.
Yeah, I would. Sorry, go across.
I was just gonna say, like, there are a lot of people that are kind of sitting on the sidelines, and when they look at Destiny 2 right now, and they see everything they have to do to get into the game, it makes them wary, right? Like, it's almost like it scares them away. And so the only reason why I think I would want a D3 is, it feels like everyone would have that fresh start.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever that fresh start may be, but it would feel like a fresh start for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think as well, for me personally, I mean, I would like them to see them do a Destiny 3. I would like to see them just kind of like wipe the slate clean in as many ways as they could and just like, well, let's have another swing at this. Not because what's here is bad, but just because that fresh start would be really an interesting project. And I think that the idea of what Destiny is, like, you are a guardian in space fighting aliens and getting cool guns, like, that is pretty, you can do a lot with that in different ways, and I think it would be fun. But if Bungie were going to do that, I really would like them to make another game that achieves similar things to Destiny, but like a new IP. Like Marathon, for example, which we'll talk about. Like, I'm interested in Marathon, don't get me wrong, but am I going to be a Marathon main? Is that my next thing? Hell no. Like, it's a competitive extraction shooter. I know I will enjoy that game for a bit, but that's not the kind of game that I come back to and that I have like a 10-year relationship with. So I would love for Bungie to think about maybe a new IP that is that kind of MMO light thing that would welcome a player like me in, because I think they've done really extraordinary work with Destiny in so many ways. I would love to see what else they could do in that space. But yeah, coming to Marathon, obviously, how are you guys feeling about Marathon? Are you guys pumped about that? Like, because we don't know. Okay, right. I mean, well, Cross, for example, you had recently heard from someone who had some inside track on Marathon. Like, what did you, just for the purpose of people watching you who hadn't heard that, what have you heard about Marathon so far?
Well, so at the time, right, like, I was looking for that boogeyman. Like, what is the thing that's taking all the developers and all the attention away? And so Marathon was that easy target. And as someone who also plays PvP, the biggest slap in our face was, hi, here's this new PV, extraction looter shooter, but here's this essentially PvP game that's going to have dedicated servers, something in which a lot of PvP players have been asking for. Although, whatever technical issues that not being possible inside of Destiny. But, just from what I've heard, there was essentially a play test of Marathon from some Tarkov streamers, and, they weren't necessarily, that crazy about it, but it's also been pushed, to me that it's a pre-alpha, right? And so, to put it under so much scrutiny is wrong, right?
Sure.
I probably shouldn't be doing that to it, and I have not played it, and and it's also been pushed to me that that it's its own thing, it's its own entity, it's its own wheelhouse, and that it's not actually taking Destiny developers away.
Sure, yeah, fair enough. So, I mean, for example, Datto, like, do you see yourself really suiting up for Marathon? Is this the next thing for you, or is it like you just can't say because you just don't know?
I just don't know. Like, Tarkov to me is not interesting. I've watched my friends play, and I'm just like crawling around in the grass for 10 minutes at a time for someone to sneak up on you or snipe you from 500 meters out. Like, that's not fun for me. So it would completely depend on what the game actually is. I haven't heard anything about Marathon. I haven't seen anything about Marathon. No one's tried to give me inside information about Marathon. The only relationship that I've had with Marathon is a friend telling me a long time ago, maybe like I've seen it. That's it. Like, okay. I've no information, literally no context for anything at all. I haven't been invited to an event. I don't know if I will be invited to an event. And also my channel is not really meant to be like the Bungie channel. It was just the Destiny channel.
Of course.
So would I like to be entertained by it? Sure. If it grabs me enough, would I like to make content on it? Sure. But without even like seeing any real gameplay, I'm just kind of like, talk to me when it comes out, or talk to me when there's a alpha or a beta, or I get invited to an event. If I get invited to an event, something. But until then, it's impossible for me to make a call.
Okay.
Man, am I going to give a answer that is going to apply to practically nobody? I think I can agree on the stance of I am absolutely not about crawling around for 10 minutes only to get murdered with a precious piece of loot that I was desperately trying to get out there with. Yeah, that does not, that's totally not what's going to appeal to me. But the really weird thing about it is that as of the moment that Marathon was revealed, I knew that there was going to be a deep story core to this game. And the weirdest part about that is that that's OG Marathon DNA. Like, it is originally a series of 3 campaigns. And you want to know how crazy it gets? There's literally time travel and cyborgs ascending into godlike beings. And it is
the Vex, right?
It's I wish it was that easy to explain. It's a whole bundle of crazy. And it's brilliant for it. It's wonderful. It's got incredible story bits and pieces that I'd love to tap into. But I just don't think it's the kind of game that's going to necessarily provide that, because it is an extraction shooter. What's the story of Tarkov? What's the story of Tarkov? Anyone got that Tarkov lore?
I don't think it's that deep.
Yeah,
I don't think it has that. Maybe it does. We don't know.
Indeed.
So.
And,
yeah, but I think it is a big I think gamble for Bungie to be pushing out into this space, because I mean, you had Halo, and that was, and I think Destiny is a natural extension of Halo. It's another, wear a suit of armor and run around with guns shooting aliens and PvP and offline, but then PvP single player, but then it had this whole MMO light thing that brought, it felt like an extension. This doesn't feel like an extension. This feels like a big jump, and I'm very interested to see their take on it. I really am. And I'm keen for it in terms of, I think the design work they've done is incredible. Like, visually, it's just like astounding. And I think as well, given how few resources Bungie has put into Destiny's PvP for the last few years, I have to hope that they've gone into this instead. And if that's the case, I would like to see a really great PvP experience from them. But also at the same time, I know that game is not for me, and so therefore, unless Destiny is really popping off, or there's some other IP coming out in the next little while, then I think I probably would have less of a relationship with Bungie going forward if sort of like Marathon becomes their focus, or if Destiny doesn't sort of evolve in a way that's likely to keep me. So, so, I mean, I think that's pretty much everything we want to discuss today. Really want to thank you guys for your time. Any final thoughts you want to close on before we wrap?
I want to say one thing about Marathon, and
sure.
Even though I've never really been crazy about extraction shooters, leading into Destiny, I don't think I really played any looter shooters. And so if Bungie really does present something here that's out there, maybe they will convince someone like me to give Marathon a go. Now I do want to mention something here, and Ralph, you can keep this in if you want.
Sure.
It's been passed on to me that there is something extremely unique about Marathon that no other extraction looter shooter has ever done. Okay. And I was like, okay, can you give me any? No, I got nothing else. So okay. That's all I was told, as vague as that is.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing, right? I don't expect Bungie's going to half-ass this. Like, they're not just putting out some, we'll make Tarkov, but with in space. Like, that's not their style, So I'm sure whatever they are going to put out there. And I also think they're going to try and speak to us as best they can. Like, as when I say us, I mean the Destiny players, people interested in the PvE experience. I think they're going to try and reach toward that community as best they can within the constraints of this ultimately being a PvP game. What that looks like, I don't know. But I think that's very core to Bungie's DNA, and I'm sure they're going to do what they can in that space. So, and again, no extraction shooter is doing that right now. No extraction shooter is at all trying to speak to PvE motivated players. So if Bungie can crack that part of the code, then that would be a big win, I think. So, yeah. But look, I want to say a big thank you to all 4 of you. Datto, obviously. Datto, Byf, Aztecross. Well, their details will be below in the description. Please go check them out. They make fantastic content and have for many, many years. And hopefully will continue to do so for many, many years. Nice. Thanks very much. Thanks, boys. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
A few months ago now, we were sponsored by AG1. I personally had not heard of them before, but they sent us all samples. And I personally have been taking it basically every day since then. It is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create a smarter, better way to elevate your baseline health.
So I've been kind of living in like renovation and construction and stuff like that. So I haven't really been able to eat real meals because like I don't have an oven right now. So I've kind of had AG1 to kind of back me up with certain things. Months ago, I had actually replaced my like daily multivitamin type thing with AG1 because it's just like a fun little green drink, way more simple than some boring old pill. But it's because of all the stuff you're getting. You're getting prebiotic, probiotic stuff for gut health, but you're also getting things that I don't normally get a lot of, like vitamin C, vitamin B, and that makes a difference, especially when you're like me and you don't have a stove or a microwave and you're barely eating.
Yeah.
I actually like that it tastes nice because when I saw this, I was like, oh, it's a green liquid thing. That's probably going to taste like the worst possible imaginable thing. But it actually tastes quite nice. And that makes a real difference as well, because given that you're drinking this every day, you don't want to like wake up fearing the thought of having to drink it. It's quite pleasant. So yeah.
It's a part of my routine now. Like I wake up, I go and I have my AG1, and it feels really nice that one of the first things I do in the morning is do something good for myself. And like you said, if it tastes good, it kind of sets my day off on the right path.
Totally.
Yeah, AG1 is a supplement that lots of folks trust to provide and support their bodies daily. And we're stoked to have them again as a partner here on FPS. So if you want to take ownership of your health today, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. So go to drinkag1.com/friends. That's drinkag1.com/friends. Check it out.
Jumping back, the biggest release from the last week or so is Alan Wake 2. Definitely took a lot of people by storm. I really loved it. Lucy, I know it is absolutely your jam.
It's my shit.
Like just up your alley. So what's your like non-spoiler take?
I can't believe this game exists.
Wow.
Like,
it's like that, isn't it? Eh?
I remember when Alan Wake came out, and it was just like, oh, like this guy's not a typical video game protagonist. He's, first of all, it's called Alan, and second of all, he's a writer. But the gameplay mechanic was so interesting, even though I guess by mid to end of the game you're kind of overusing it, and then if you dug into the story, it was just so weird, and there were all these breadcrumbs, and then the balls on Remedy for ending with it's not a lake, it's an ocean, and then going, yeah, well, gonna have to wait 13 years to understand what that means.
Yeah.
But then even with the gameplay of this one, of like their first stab at doing survival horror, implementing things like the case board, the mind plays. I think for me, rewriting reality is such an interesting gameplay mechanic, and none of it is, I don't think it's overused either. Interweaving narratives, like just not being afraid to be so weird. Possibly the funniest game I've played this year too. I know we talked about like the commercials and stuff before. I just can't believe it exists, and I'm so glad it does. I finished it the other day, and anyone who has been following my journey to become the ultimate PC gamer with an OLED TV, I think I had the best possible experience, because also the clocks are changing, so it's been dark at 6 p.m. every day here, which has been fantastic. I've just been playing in the dark on an OLED TV, and it has been with all the RTX stuff turned on, and it's been pretty great.
Love to see it.
It's been pretty great.
Yeah, visually it's pretty nuts. Graphically, but also art direction. Like Control really had it figured out with like incredible lighting and like bold titles and all this great like light and dark imagery. But I think here the best thing is the jumping between the two worlds. So there's Saga's woodsy world, and then there's Alan's noir, grimy, dirty, like turbo New York. And the contrast is so awesome, and flipping back and forth, and the kind of like different feel, different style, different visual, like even a little bit of like gameplay differences was really good pacing wise. The way I played, I jumped around as much as I could.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did the opposite.
and
I
I
just
like
played
that.
through Saga, and then I played through Alan.
I would do 1 and 1.
Okay, right. Yeah, fair enough. I found it was really nice to play through Unbroken, and then I noticed some callbacks. And then as you go and play the other side of it, it reminds you of things you experienced many hours ago, and you're like, oh, cool, it's this part that I'm up to now. And you kind of, I really like that a lot, because it sort of, brought me back to those memories that I might have forgotten about had I not done it that way, you know?
Yeah.
I jumped around a lot because like I liked the feel, but I also, any opportunity I could, I wanted to move back and forth, because I was like, let me see if I could break this. Like, is this going to hold up? Am I still going to understand the core, the base story? And I did, thankfully, which I think is a testament to, like, that's pretty tricky. Like,
Yeah.
So the fact that I was able to tell what was going on and keep track of things was pretty good.
Totally. Yeah. Narratively, it's like very unwieldy, but I think I think some people are like, nah, man, this collapses. It just doesn't work. And I'm like, I can understand that. I don't necessarily, I wouldn't come out here and say, oh, narratively, it's watertight. It's totally perfect, whatever. I can understand how some people be like, nah, this just didn't work for me. Fair enough. But for me, it worked. Like, I was on board with its messiness. I was on board with like its self-indulgence at times, and just seeing all those mysteries sort of coalesce, it was fantastic. I couldn't get enough of it. It was 20 hours and I was just like riveted from start to finish. Even in the slow moments, I was still like all in. It really was just like
well paced. I also was just very happy that, like, from a gameplay perspective, I really liked it. The combat and the survival horror elements are simple. It's not the most like complex third person shooter or anything, but it was just challenging enough. I liked the enemy types, specifically in Alan's world. It's not often I play a game where like I find the enemies that unpredictable and they make me skittish. Because I was like, at this point, it's like I've seen it all. I can handle. But I was on my toes for just shadow enemies constantly. I was like, I don't know what they're going to do.
They were scary.
I don't know if this one's going to throw
reflection
stuff.
one?
I don't know if this one's going to teleport. And then you start getting nervous about regular shadows in the game world that aren't even men. Like, it's really well done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the Saga enemy stuff wasn't as strong because it was just kind of like teleporting zombie men. But the shadow stuff was very... the way that they sort of look at you and they'd be like, Alan Wake. And you're like, whoa. You know what I mean?
Oh, shit.
And they're sort of like walking slowly towards you. And you're like, should I go left? Should I go right? Should I try and run past them? Is that one going to grab me or not?
And
then sometimes they fucking clothesline you and knock you to
they
the ground.
They do. And you're like, oh, come on, man.
I thought you were cool, man.
Yeah. So I reckon they really nailed that enemy design stuff. It would have been cool if there was some more enemies and some like, I don't know, some deeper elements to the combat sandbox, because obviously you compare it to something like Resident Evil 4, it's chalk and cheese. Like, there's just so much more you can do in combat in Resident Evil 4, so many more enemy types. But what's there is it really works, I think, a lot. Except I didn't like the upgrade system. Did you guys like the upgrades?
I liked it on Alan's side.
Okay.
I liked what they were doing with encouraging you to go and find the Alex Casey lunchboxes and stuff. But it felt like the economy was a little not in my favor compared to finding Words of Power on Saga's side.
Definitely.
Also, I think it's really funny. So, Gerard, the way that you upgrade on Alan's side is there are these arrows in the environment, and if you shine your torch on them, that kind of points to basically this big scroll of words, and then if you shine your torch on it, you get a word of power, and then you can apply that as an upgrade. But they're named words of lamp, word of lamp, word of gun, gun, word of aid or something. But word of lamp killed me every time.
Word of lamp is good. I love lamp.
I love lamp.
I love lamp.
Whereas with Saga, you find fan fiction.
That's right. Little cut up.
AO3.
Oh.
But yeah.
Sorry, Joe, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I I played Control and I loved Control. Control was wonderful. I just started playing the original Alan Wake a couple of months ago to anticipate for Alan Wake 2. There's just too many games. We never got around to finishing it.
Yes.
And it's on my very small list of games that I will play just for myself this holiday season.
Good.
And I'm taking a holiday break for a couple days.
Good.
It's Alan Wake and a couple of indie games that I'm like really focused on. I'm not touching Baldur's Gate 3. I'm not. If I touch it, I will play nothing else, and I'm not ready for that lifestyle.
Doomed. Yeah, Alan Wake, a good time, like a weekend, lights off, headphones on, perfect for that. Yeah. Can I freak out a little bit about just like how, just the Alex Casey stuff, the imagery, the use of James McCaffrey's voice, the use of Sam Lake's face, and just how hard they go on all of that, and like the cool factor of it, the presentation of it, the amount of references and callbacks to their other games that felt just right, didn't feel like overly like bang you over the head, but like finding little tiny Max Payne things here and there, finding like all kind, like I don't want to spoil anything, but like that stuff just like, I haven't like gushed about this yet, excuse me, like in a video. So like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was so well handled. It was very self-aware without it sort of feeling like they're just kind of jerking themselves off. You know, it was they really struck the right balance of knowing that they had a great history worth celebrating without it being that kind of with the winks to camera and all that sort of shit where you're like, all right, we get it. Yes, you made Max Payne. That's fine. Like they just got the balance perfect.
Exciting too. Like it's just exciting, the word specifically, because, and it's the same reason why, like Gerard, like with Control, like why I liked Control is that you can look at Control and you can look at Alan Wake 2 and think like, oh, they really love that. They definitely are referencing that.
That's
they're definitely
their thing that they
influenced
do
by this.
Yeah.
But even with all those influences, the product itself, the end result thing is so unique. Like I can't really point to another video game and be like, oh, that's like that's like Alan Wake, or that's like Control. Like they are so much their own unique things despite all the influences. And that's like a really impressive and hard to like pin down thing.
And
Absolutely.
So Finnish.
Yeah, that too.
Like
I love the Finnish stuff.
When Control came out, we did audio logs with them about the Ashtray Maze. And I think there was a bit that we actually had to cut, which was talking about, they were getting more Finnish stuff in there. And so Artie, there's a whole scene, I think it's as you're going to the Ashtray Maze or something, when you're in the foundation of the oldest house, and he's talking about, you hear sound effects from a sauna. And they talked about, how they're trying to incorporate more Finnish stuff in. And I'm so glad that in Alan Wake 2, they just went for it.
All in on it. And it's like, even though someone who grew up in, I guess, formerly Europe, Great Britain, don't really know that much about Finland. Never been, not really familiar, I guess, until, fairly recently. I want to go and have a sauna in Finland. That's what I want to do. They're really serious about it over there. Yeah. So like Japan and Finland, they seem to be very serious about their saunas. So do it.
The problem is that like without a shirt on, I look like E.T. So
yeah,
no one judges.
I relate to that, Jake. Without a shirt on, I'm E-Honda, so I totally understand where you're coming from.
Well,
Nice.
I like that we did manage to talk to Kyle and Sam specifically about some of that Finnish influence and like, the game having an identity about that. So I think without further ado, we should roll that interview because it was a lot of fun, a lot of good insight. So Sam Lake, you know him. Kyle Rowley, if you don't know him, now you do. Co-directors of Alan Wake 2. Here we go. Thank you guys so much for being here. I want to dive right into specifically the fact that you guys are co-directors. For the layman, Kyle, I'd like to start with you. How does Coder? Oh, isn't that great?
They're hugging.
Aw.
For anyone just listening to the audio, they just hugged. It was very cute. It was adorable.
Very cute, very wholesome. So how, Kyle? How does co-directing work? Do you split duties? Is it like one person handles Saga, one person handles Alan? We have no idea.
That would be right. Yeah, I mean, like it's well, we basically, me and Sam come from like very like different backgrounds. Like Sam comes obviously from a writing background, and my background mainly comes from design. So there's a very nice split there in terms of like areas of responsibility. It doesn't mean we're not like constantly not talking to each other about like all those different things. Exactly. So, like when we're doing reviews of like whether it's gameplay mechanics or whether we're doing reviews of like story stuff, we're normally both there, both working together on that. And it's also very beneficial just in case like someone gets sick, or Sam had to go away for quite a long time during the production of this game to actually kind of finish the story because
to write it.
But so like at that point, it was like I was just kind of doing all the directing, and then me and Sam were syncing all the time. So it helps, I think, from a production perspective as well, just like how we kind of split those responsibilities. And it wasn't just us really. Like we also had our art director, Jani Pulkkanen, very much involved in that whole process. So it kind of comes from a kind of trifecta of like art design and narrative. So
yeah, but it's been a big success from our perspective. I don't honestly think that we would have on creative matters we would have argued once during the whole thing. Like it
wow.
It just so much a shared vision what we wanted to create, and this is including Janne, who is a genius on visual things and understands the technology very, very well behind it as well, what is possible and what is not. But it's been a wonderful process, and I also do think like that games are just growing so big and so complex that it feels that by this kind of an approach we can for sure get more done than one person would. And the great thing I think with me and Kyle is that we care about everything in this game a lot, but at the same time when it goes to details, we don't necessarily really feel passionate and care about the same details. So just kind of like pushing certain things forward and catching certain things, we have a wider spread between us.
Especially during when we did a lot of reviews during this kind of like production. Obviously, we're playing the game a lot, and yeah, when we're sat together, like someone personally, we're like, actually, we should probably need to change this, and we'd be like, oh yeah, definitely do that. And that's kind of like the same thing throughout the whole of production, that we kind of were on the same wavelength. I think it helped that we started on the project together. So from the very beginning, came up with the concept together, pitched the game together, like worked on everything basically together from the start right until the end. So that kind of really helped.
That's interesting because you guys have gone on record saying you've wanted to make Alan Wake 2 for 13 years. So what was it that was keeping you from doing that? Was it just money? Was it an idea? What was it?
Yeah, well, that part is maybe more on me, because Kyle wasn't at Remedy back then and through all of those years. It's just that these game projects are massive, and quite a few things need to come together and click together for it to happen. Well, a right partner, publisher, and funding to begin with. And I feel that our industry kind of does this waveform of where the trends are and what is the interest and what's the portfolio of the publishers and all of that. Coming out of Alan Wake 1, it just felt like everybody had moved away from single player story games. Like it felt like it needs to be open world, it needs to be multiplayer, all of those things, and even like and what had happened at Microsoft Studios, who was our kind of like first address to go and pitch the sequel, as we have done the first game with them, like people had shifted around. So suddenly we were actually talking with a whole new group of people, none of them who had been involved in the original game. And they were just like looking for something else. But even back then, in that concept, because these concepts for the sequel have evolved quite drastically through the years that we have kind of like taken to publishers. In that one, there was an idea that between the game missions, there would be a live action episode or story. And this was something that they were like really keen on immediately. They were not really interested in continuing Alan Wake at that point, but they were like, can you do something custom for us that would have this idea in that in the concept? And that turned into Quantum Break then.
Wow.
And after that, like with Mikael Kasurinen, who is the game director on Control, the whole franchise, we created a pitch for Alan Wake 2 that was kind of it had some of the ideas that Control embraced on the design side, coming from Mixu really, is, the superpowers and the kind of a hub-like structure of it. And at that point, kind of feedback we were getting was maybe it should be closer to the original game. But we were excited about these ideas, so we decided no, we'll do something else with these ideas, which turned into Control. And after then, like coming out of Control, then we sat down and let's create a new concept.
So basically, it was because I was available. That's why the next one's.
Nice, very nice.
Yes. Like you, yeah.
So all the pieces are coming together for Alan Wake 2. You've got Epic as a publisher. What was that relationship like? Was there ever like any pressure to maybe change from Northlight to using Unreal? Have they been supportive of the project the whole way?
Yeah, definitely. No pressures on basically any on the creative side or production side or technology side. They've been amazing. I mean,
like pitching to them and sitting in that room, like Hector Sanchez on the publishing side, like he got the vision immediately, and he was really excited about it. And all through the way, they have all been, and Hector in the front line, championing and defending the creative vision that it needs to be our creative vision, and it's been really, really nice.
And we've had good counterparts on like design. Jeff was amazing. Nico on production.
Yeah, yes.
Every area that we needed support from, they kind of helped us. And there's no way that this game would be the game it is if it wasn't for them supporting us in that way.
Because it's always really, really hard to make these games, and there are struggles and difficulties along the way.
That was there's always those kind of odd meetings you have there where I remember the one we had where they were like, so this narrative's pretty complicated, and we were like, when
I don't know.
When people are going to understand it, we're like at the very end, they're like, oh, that sounds pretty scary. Like, don't worry, we'll come together, it'll be fine.
So do you guys see that relationship with Epic deepening in the future? Is this kind of, you've been through this crucible now and it's like, on to the next thing, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's too early to say. Like I said, we've been really, really happy with them, but also we've been just so focused in creating this and getting it done and kind of like, as always, like things are coming together in this kind of a scramble of chaos. Just very, very focused on that, and there is the DLC plan, which will take us like into the next year. So I'm sure that there will be discussions, but it's too early to really, really kind of like have anything nailed down on that.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So coming back to what you were saying about the writing side of things, the story, and you're like, this story can get pretty complicated. It certainly can. I'm very curious, like, what the starting point for that was, though. Was it always clear in your mind? Like, I know exactly, or at least I know where this needs to begin? Or were you kind of like looking around for some inspiration? Or like, what was the beginning of the writing process for this game?
I mean,
he came across an echo scene in
Is that... move the camera this way and that. Yeah, that's right.
Got it. Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, we can go
forward. What element? It's there. Yeah. The story has changed quite a lot through the years on different concepts, but maybe because of that thinking along the way, when going into this, I did have a very strong vision of the story that I wanted to tell. A lot of the details were missing on different levels, but certain kind of like, setups and twists and ideas and themes were there when we created kind of our pitch for it, like this deck. And then it's the normal actual iteration process of diving deeper. I got Tyler Burton Smith, who worked with us on Quantum Break screenplays, and he's more focused on film and TV, and has been for few last years. But I love collaborating with him, and I called him up, and we spent several weeks workshopping the details of the story, like things that I hadn't figured out, and came up with solutions, and then I continued iterating to get a synopsis and get a treatment. I have never done collaboration this closely with anyone. Usually it's back and forth, but it worked really well, and I was really, really happy with that, and happy with the screenplay as well once we got it done.
Yeah, it's hard because it's such a narrative-driven game, and we still needed to, obviously, we were still making the game alongside us, trying to figure out the story, as is always the case. But because our game mechanics are so directly connected to trying to help tell the story, until we figured out, like, how does the plot board work? How does the mind place and the case board work? Like, what's the structure of our game? Until we kind of, like, when can you switch characters? Like, how does that whole like dual narrative even work? Like, until we kind of figured that out, it was very difficult for Sam to go away and write the screenplay the locked one. So I think that was one of the challenges we had. Like, we were doing proof of concepts, which are kind of like mini versions of each side of the game. And we were like, Sam, we need a narrative for this to prove that we can tell a story in this proof of concept. But he was like, I need to write the story, the actual story. But we also need you to write this other thing. And he's like, and so it's like those kind of juggling of priorities, and like, which is always the difficult thing when making a game on this scale with this much narrative. So,
yeah. How did you keep it all from? I mean, like with callbacks and references and the depth of the plot. Like, how do you keep it from collapsing in on itself? Is there like a whole team behind you guys? Is there like a lore master keeping track of everything, even like scene switching?
No, and I want to here officially give my big thank you to all the wonderful fans keeping Alan Wake wikis up to date. I confess, I trust these people.
That's great.
I love that.
We said something about this in the original Alan Wake, but I can't for the life of me remember the details. Okay, Alan Wake wiki. Okay, that's what it was. So
that is very in keeping with the meta narrative, I think, where the writer gets his cues from the wikis that were written by the fans based on the writer's writings. That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Story written by the community just as much as Sam, I guess. I mean, we do have a full narrative design team as well, on top of obviously the writing team, and they kind of like led by Simon Vassala, who's like kind of tracking everything. We have stuff obviously logged in our kind of internal documentation. Because as we said, the story is kind of complex, and there's often times where I'm playing it, I'm going like, what the hell were we meant to be doing here again? Like, Sam, explain this thing to me.
It's been sweet that now many people in the team who have worked on this game for years, and then towards the end started playing it and go like, I didn't know it's about this. So.
And Sam, obviously, you are in the game. What was it like writing for yourself?
Oh yeah, I have a story about this.
Here we go. Here we go.
You know, Anssi Määttä, who is our wonderful, really talented cinematics and live action director, and a wonderful guy in the sense that kind of like he has the experience, but he had absolutely no problem on letting me run around like a crazy person on the set and direct the actors and remind everybody, oh, this connects to that, so we need to do this, and once again, like teamwork and a wonderful collaborator. But anyway, Anssi had this moment of like, well, we have the short film in there, Yötön Yö, Nightless Night, the short film where I have the pleasure of acting
Great.
with really kind of well-established, really talented Finnish kind of like big name actors like Martti Suosalo as Ahti and Peter Franzen and of course Ilkka Villi. Anyway, I wrote the screenplay and I'll openly kind of reveal things that didn't go into the game now. Because of the Nightingale scene at the beginning of the game, and this is supposed to be these twisted echoes, the character I'm playing ends up, well, bad things happen. And how I wrote it to echo that was that this guy is stumbling through the forest naked. Because, yeah.
Sure.
And as a writer, I'm fully focused on this is what the story is supposed to be. And then we are on the set with like a lot of people on the set, and we have the whole forest built into the studio, and I go like, do I really need to be naked?
Did you? Question mark.
And Anssi goes like, you wrote this. You wrote this. And I got, yeah, but that was the different me. That was the writer. And I'm now here talking to the director as an actor. Do I really need to be naked? And he's like, you wrote it. Like, whatever. You can, like, so I'm not quite naked, except in the sauna scene. So
right, yeah. Okay. Serious question next. Who the fuck wrote those commercials?
So it's interesting as well. Like Tyler Burton Smith wrote them, and he's Canadian. He's not even a Finn, but he did live in Finland for a few years, and obviously has been exposed to the culture.
Right, I see.
And there were like obviously these ideas on what these commercials are about and what should we joke about and focus on. Those we did figure out with Clay and gave to Tyler that can you please write these, because like he's not here, he's in the States in LA, and so kind of like we were looking for these modular things that he could just take and write while we are focusing on the bigger story. So Tyler did, and yeah, they are hilarious. I love them.
Radios too, right? The radios.
He did
the radios too, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Because they are genuine. When you see the TV on, you're like, oh yeah baby, straight let's go, another commercial. All right.
I think they were just like you know, having a bit of like comedy in a horror game, I think almost it like makes the horror even scarier. You know, it's kind of like I think we talked about this before, but like they kind of like work very well together in heightening each other. And especially for like Alan Wake, the franchise, like we've always had this kind of like small town Americana vibes in there. You know, quirky characters, a bit, and daytime scenes where you can just wander around. So having a bit of levity throughout that kind of horror experience.
A bit.
Kind of like, I think it just kind of like pacing wise, it also helps us to help, you know, on the player side. So.
Yes. Actually, and kind of circling back to what you said just a second ago about like Finland, like how, because obviously, you know, you guys Finnish studio, predominantly Finnish dev team, and you really put that out there in your game. You know what I mean? Like you can really feel that cultural impact in what you make. Why is that so important to you? Like, what is the choice to do that, and how does that manifest in the way that you work?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, these days Remedy actually is pretty much 50-50 Finnish people and then like people from all around the world. So very kind of international team as such. But yeah, we started out here, and I'm a Finn, and so like very much my native culture. I feel I've grown into it in a weird way. That kind of growing up, it was always like I was really a big fan of, American popular culture in all the different forms, and all of our games have been set in the US. So been drawing very much inspirations out of that. But then like there are these elements that I feel are Finnish, like the whole snowstorm setting of the original Max Payne, or the idea of Pacific Northwest, the wilderness and light and dark, which is a big thing about kind of seasonal change in Finland, like wintertime is pitch black and summer is all light. So there are these things have been there, but then year by year, maybe it's about growing older and starting to be nostalgic, or just kind of like being able to realize like that our culture here is unique and something that kind of is close to my heart and I feel proud about, and it's very fresh and unique and exotic, like seen outside.
For the rest of us, sure, of course.
Even things that might be here a cliche is suddenly not a cliche of like what kind of a this kind of a comedy figure of a Finnish man, say, and drawing from that to Ahti in some ways, these elements, and Ahti was so well received, like such positive, feedback, and Martti Suosalo, the actor winning that year's BAFTA award for the side role, and honestly, he didn't even know what BAFTA is when I told him, because he's so focused and always like he has done leading roles in multiple Finnish films. He's done theater, he's done musicals, he's done everything, but only in Finland. And so that somehow gave me the license of like, okay, we can push this, we can keep on going.
There's the thing interesting there, because like when we were going through, like after we'd already built it all, actually, we kind of put it in front of like obviously like external reviewers, and one of the questions that Epic asked was like, "Is this game too Finnish?" Like, but it came out like, no, it's great. Like,
it's definitely not. I really think it's one of the most endearing qualities of the whole game, because it is firstly unique, but secondly unique to you guys, and it's just one of those things that really makes it kind of reminds you that Remedy made this video game, and it's nice to see the kind of fingerprints, you know what I mean, of culture on works, you know what I mean? So yeah, I really love it.
And honestly, even Saga's character, I and obviously Old Gods, then like having a Nordic origin point and Nordic background, and on Saga's side, like she says early on that the family on her mother's side originates from Sweden, and she has the very Nordic wool sweater, like also very much something seen in Nordic noir. So even there, I felt that kind of like we can bring it close to home in many ways.
And the team take it quite seriously, because I don't think I've ever seen so many bug reports about a sauna not working correctly in our game we had on this project. Like, it's just, this is sauna not working correctly. This leaf is in the wrong place. This stone is not in the correct place. This is not enough steam coming out.
And I've had this impulse whenever like we were demoing with the Watery mission.
Yeah.
And people were playing, and I was watching them play, and they went into the sauna, and they came out, but they left the door open behind them. You're not supposed to leave the door open because like all the heat like escapes.
Sure.
So yeah. Anyway, like I feel now, and we can say this looking forward, before somebody now tells me you need to stop, this is enough, this is now too much. Well, I think we'll have more finished stuff.
Yes, definitely. That is good news. That's good news. Love it.
What about the coffee themed theme park? Is there is there a Finnish equivalent or something like that? Because it felt, as someone from a small town who had a little weird theme park in the woods, you nailed it.
Yeah, I think that started because, I actually can't remember where it started, but I remember when we were first on this project, and I was doing this an example, like mock-up of like how we wanted to structure a mission, for example, including, backtracking, making it more open or whatever. I had just like, I did something generic just to get the structure across, and it was like a theme park. And I remember Sam going like, we should maybe do this. He's like, yeah, we can't do just a theme park. It needs to be, how do we make this like Alan Wake theme park, basically? And then I think that's kind of like where this idea of, setting it in like a coffee themed one. And obviously it's being set in the Pacific Northwest, a very small town. I think setting it in the middle, like it's kind of like a rundown town, right? So I think that having it there where it's kind of dilapidated and there's this overgrown by nature, I think kind of just artistically was also just very appealing for us. So
yeah, and obviously it kind of going back to, original Alan Wake inspirations and Stephen King and all. Obviously, an amusement park is kind of your horror setting to begin with, but how to then find ways of making it unique. And Finland is like, we are like number one in the world in coffee consumption. So
really,
yeah, we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's big. All right, fair enough.
It's pretty like strong coffee as well. It's not like tastes like diesel to me. I can't drink it. It's like in the Matrix where he's drinking that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So Remedy Connected Universe. It's very funny that you guys kept saying you don't have to have played Alan Wake or Control to really get Alan Wake 2, but I feel like you really get Alan Wake 2 if you have played the other games. How conscious were you of making Alan Wake 2 connect to everything else? Like, was the Remedy Connected Universe always the goal, or was it something that over the course of the past decade or so you've just kind of fallen into?
I kind of feel that the whole thing began really with the idea of Easter eggs, and like I do love in literature kind of metatextual things, and feel in postmodern writing overall. That's always part of it, and part of the fun of it, kind of analyzing it. And games kind of naturally always had that, even way back when, like there were Easter eggs, and they were usually jokes or just kind of like, having a texture or a sign of some kind. And even going to then original Max Payne, I really felt this is like a cool thing and we can do stuff with it. But then at the same time, we wanted to have another playable character. We wanted to have Saga with no prior knowledge of any of this, and for new players and even old players coming into this new experience and world of this game, like she's learning, she's discovering, and so are the players. I really like honestly think that kind of how we approach this, and well, that's for everybody to say how we succeeded, was that it needs to be thrilling and enjoyable, even if you don't have this knowledge. But really, it's also a love letter to all of our lovely fans from previous games. And we wanted to kind of have it be dense and layered and a ton of things waiting to be discovered.
And do you think that is going to guide you a lot for your next projects? I guess what I'm really asking is, would you ever feel constrained by that? Do you feel like every project now needs to do this, or is it likely that Remedy's next 2 or 3 games are going to be something totally different outside of this connected universe?
Yeah, we generally start with like, what is this game that we're trying to make, like, and what's makes it unique and what makes it stand out by itself. And then after we've kind of found the foundations for the game and its story and everything, then we can start thinking about how we can make those connections. Like, and you know, we have a few different projects going on inside Remedy. So, you know, people see that and different people are working on different projects. So, you know, they see stuff that's happening in this game, and then they get excited. Oh, maybe we can actually do that. But it's not like we kind of have these kind of big meetings. Go like, how do we connect all this stuff together? That's not kind of like how we go about doing it. It's very much on the like each game needs to stand by itself, and then we try and layer those things in as we're making the game.
Yeah, cool. And just briefly on the gameplay side of the equation. So obviously this was a shift to survival horror this time around. It's the first time that you guys made a survival horror game. How'd you think you did? You feel like you nailed it? Like, what do you reckon?
I think well, we'll let other people decide. Obviously, I think that internally we're pretty happy. I think, you know, it's a challenging genre to do because it's like, you know, getting that feeling of running out of resources and kind of having enough opportunities to kind of like have an influence on how you tackle those different encounters, like making sure you have enough like resources and verbiage on the player side, or kind of mechanics on the player side to make it interesting. But like, you know, if you have way too many resources, it doesn't feel like it's survival enough. You don't have enough resources, then it's like, it feels frustrating. So I'm trying to come up with the balance there across 3 different difficulties so that, you know, various different play styles could basically get that feeling. That was obviously quite challenging. And then I think that we basically traditionally only done action games effectively. So, you know, our enemies are on the screen for a lot less long, not as long as you would normally have in a survival horror game. So when we're building AI, you know, if we're coming from Quantum Break to Control, you kind of throw an ability at them, they kind of vanish straight away. We just have lots of on screen. Here, because they kind of take longer to kill, we had to kind of build out more behaviors, kind of have more animations. Like, you know, when you run into a safe haven, they need to react and actually have like behaviors that kind of show that they're reacting to you doing that. So that was kind of like, we were kind of like, oh, we can kind of do survival horror and, you know, just take some stuff from Control, it'll be fine. And then we're like, oh, yeah, this is actually a lot more work than we thought it was going to be. So yeah, I think it was challenging. I think but I do feel like we built a lot of cool tech specifically to kind of, you know, we really were, I think for us on the gameplay side, we really wanted to make it feel physical. And that meant that enemies should feel physical. And also like the player character needed to feel like more physical than what we'd had in previous games. So, you know, building technology to allow the character to like actually have the weapons physically on them. We'd never done that before. Actually in Quantum Break, we didn't even have animated weapons in Quantum Break. They weren't animated at all. We only added like the ability to animate weapons when we were building Crossfire, because we're like, oh, we've got a first person, the gun is like the hit show. Oh, wait, they don't animate. That's not going to work. So we had to kind of build technology for that. And then in Control, we started to kind of build, you know, Jesse's service weapon kind of like animates very, very interestingly. So we started building technology that allowed us to then, for this game, you know, have physicality of the weapons on the back, have more physicality on the animation side using motion matching. So it was just like I think we've said this before on a technological level in terms of like how we use live action and how we kind of blend on the visual side, but even on gameplay side, we wouldn't have been able to do this game that we build now if we tried to do it in the past. Like, we just wouldn't have had the technology to do it. We wouldn't have had the knowledge on how to kind of like do more hub-like layouts than we did from Control. Like, our technology would not have supported streaming in that amount of data. So I think, yeah, on all different aspects, like everything just kind of came together at the right time for us, like creatively, technology-wise, on gameplay side. Yeah.
And it did feel like once we honed in on the idea that let's just do a survival horror game, it just clicked so strongly that this is the right idea, and it will give us everything that we need, first of all for more story focus and more interactive storytelling all in all, but also the balancing of how to build the atmosphere, how to kind of release the tension, and everything just felt like, how did we not see this before? Why did we not think about this before? Really, really happy and have been through the whole project about this. It
kind of came about at a time when, you know, horror's kind of picking up, not just in games, like, you know, obviously Resident Evil 2 had just come out, so that was kind of very popular, so it kind of gave us confidence that we could make something that was, you know, that people would kind of be into. And that's just kind of over the years, that's just kind of like increased it more so, you know, with the new Resident Evils and all those games that are coming out in the horror genre right now. But then also just on even popular culture, like A24 is kind of like a big inspiration for us in like how to tell a horror story. You know, it's we do have some jump scares and stuff in the game, but like that's kind of only one aspect of a horror game.
Just a couple.
Yeah, atmosphere obviously is
Just
very
a couple.
but the journey that those characters go through and like and how the story as a horror story as a whole, I think was kind of like something that we did definitely looked at from modern horror in film with like Hereditary and Midsommar and The Witch and The Lighthouse. You know, a lot of those kind of more modern art house horror movies definitely kind of we kind of looked at those for inspiration.
Well, let's move over to live action. You guys have done live action before, but what is the main driving force behind that?
I love live action.
Cool.
That's it. There we go.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Like, it goes in some ways all the way back to Max Payne and kind of there wanting to create a believable world, like with the constraints that we had back then. And because it's a modern world, it just always felt that these different mediums being there are essential for creating that feel. Now let's take that and do way more. We could just build sets that are one-to-one to our digital locations, like the writer's room or the hotel or the talk show studio, and shoot live action there. And then a big discussion for us was like, how do we put that into the critical path so that it's actually kind of stylized in a way that it seamlessly goes from gameplay into this kind of a scene. And Alan Wake needs to be confused as the player is confused and struggling with that and just kind of like really, really building something bigger and more ambitious with that. Like for the first time with Alan Wake 2, we've had a full live action crew, professionals on it, but something that we are driving here and working with, and a lot of learnings for future once again, but I've been so happy with that whole side, and yes, it's fragmented, but we basically had a full feature film production hiding inside the game production, because that's the amount of live action we all together have in this.
Well, speaking of the future, I mean, you guys have done live action, projection, radio, TV shows. Is there another medium you're passionate about that you guys would want to tackle? Like, are we going to see like Lords and Ladies in 3D or something?
I think musical would be really cool. No, wait. Okay, that's
nice. Well, actually, that's a good segue. So this next part then is a spoiler, right? So anyone listening to this now who hasn't played Alan Wake yet, go and play Alan Wake right now, okay? And come back later. Just skip forward in the podcast a little bit so you don't hear this next bit, okay? So we'll give you a minute to click off and fast forward. Okay. All right. The spoiler warning is done. Now, Alan Wake 2 contains arguably one of the best sequences I've ever experienced in a video game. It is a straight up musical number. I don't know, what is it actually called, by the way? What is the name of this sequence? Can't remember.
Well, the song is Herald of Darkness, the old guard song.
And the chapter's what we sing.
Yeah, the
sing, of course.
Yeah, the chapter is We Sing, and Door has another name, which something like
Story of Alan Wake.
The story of journey of Alan Wake, the music.
Right. Okay, got it. So first of all, who came up with the idea for this? Who was that person?
Who do you think came up with the idea for that? Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some genius at the back of the studio.
No, it's definitely Sam. And I remember him saying, like, I want to do a musical. And I was like, you're mental. What are you talking about? And then he's like, no, we can do it. And then I was like, how okay, let's just have a discussion about what that would even look like. We did not talk to this with anyone in Epic or anyone anywhere going like, oh, we're thinking about adding a musical to the game.
I tried to get a musical into Control.
Yes,
but
really, but who told you no? Who told what? Was it 505 or whatever? Who's the publisher?
It was really, really hard to have the musical for a number of reasons in this, and there were many production meetings. Come on, we need to cut this. Let's
really
cut.
Interesting. Okay, so what were? Sorry, Carl. Go on.
Like, absolutely not. we are not cutting this.
Yeah. And I was like, Sam, maybe the musical, and he was like, no. And I was like, okay, let's go. Okay.
So what were some of those production challenges then?
Well, early on, and as the iteration always happens, is that I wanted a musical, and because this is an Alan Wake game, I knew it has to be Old Gods of Asgard, and then kind of like there was a lot of iteration on the idea, figuring it out, and I was thinking about late night talk show, as a setting, like you watch late night talk show, and certainly you could imagine that whatever Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Fallon, like they could set up, like we did this musical number in the studio.
Sure.
This kind of a so it felt like a natural place for it. And I did have the idea that this needs to be about Alan Wake, and it needs to go in parts through his whole life, like starting with childhood, his rise to fame, Alan Wake 1 story, and then what is the setup for this. But like we were talking about early on, like, well, are we doing mocap, or like how do we do it? And as the idea of the use of live action was in other ways refined and finding its place, it became clear that, okay, that's how we do it, that it's kind of this halfway state between worlds that he slips into, and we're kind of watching the musical happen in the talk show, but you as the player are not quite there, and you are trying to get there, and obviously transitions go through these screens, always like interacting with the screen, so all the parts are trying to get there, and finally then as a reward, the climax, the final chorus where everybody joins in is the
Originally it was actually much more physical. Like it was actually like a theater, like a stage production. Actually, we had a lot of like fits. We have a bit of that in what's there now, where kind of screens are moving, but it was much more like a stage theater production, and less with the kind of live action stuff.
More being in that studio all the time.
Right.
But over just because of I can't remember exactly why we changed it. I think it was more like production realities, actually, doing this like animation, and it was just too expensive, so we ended up doing it in live action. And I think one of the challenges with that whole sequence, coming off of Control, where obviously we did the ashtray maze, and Control was an action game, so we could kind of push the player through a lot of action sequences to kind of drive them through the experience. And this one, well, it's a survival horror game, and if you say to someone, we want to put a musical in a survival horror game, the question comes like, well, what's the gameplay loop there? And we kind of like, okay, I think rather than kind of having this be something the player's necessarily interacting with a lot, we kind of like build it around the player as so it's like you're walking through the experience.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how we ended up kind of making that whole, because if you think about, if you actually play through it, you're not actually doing a lot until the last third of it. It's kind of all happening around you, and you're kind of like a spectator to this, this crazy thing that's kind of like fever dreams.
Utterly mad thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was the only way we could really make this kind of sequence work in this genre of game.
Collaborating with Ports of the Fall as Old Gods of Asgard, which has like it first of all, like all of this is like goes back to, we had the stage fight scene in Alan Wake 1, and that like turned out to be a fan favorite in many ways, and going back to that idea, and then the ashtray maze in Control, and everybody went crazy about it, and it just felt like, well, how do we come back to this idea but in a different way? Well, we are doing several of them in a way in this game, but figuring that out, and and the whole thing of, well, it's a talk show, like purely on the song side. Then I was talking with poets guys and saying that it should kind of be back and forth, like, so Dory's there and he's the host and interviews Alan Wake. So he poses a question and Alan Wake answers. And I knew that like Matt is a great singer. And so Alan Wake can sing in this. And then like us finding David Harewood, who is wonderful as Dor, and he has a background in singing, and so poets were like in those sessions directing them and getting the right kind of like type of a performance out of them to fit into the song that they were making, and yeah. And we had a dance choreographer.
I was going to say,
because you're pulling some shapes, Sam.
You really are, man. How long did it take you to get that shit down? Because that would not have been easy.
I like some inspirations, like Peacemaker, the show.
Yeah, the intro. That's what I thought.
Yeah. And I was going like, look at this, like something like this on the same level. And other inspiration that I wanted was the calibration sequence of a mocap scene. You know, when the actor steps in and T-pose and all of these steps, like you know, let's look at this and is there anything there? And please make it easy enough so that an amateur can learn it, because like I'm no dancer and Ilkka is no dancer and David is pretty good. And so yeah, when I started rehearsing this at home based on Sophia's, our choreographer's video, I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna learn this. And then I just, but yeah, like over the weekend I was practicing one weekend, and then we started with her actually practicing it, and yeah, I got it. I'm so proud.
Well, it is genuinely amazing, and thank you for making it, because it's a true highlight in a game full of highlights. So you absolutely crushed it.
Yeah. I guess final question, the response to Alan Wake 2 has been kind of incredible. What are you guys like feeling about it now that it's out there in the world and you're seeing, the review scores and fans react to it?
Tired. Yeah, I know what you mean. Tired, and like I'm just anxious. Like I'm just constantly like looking at what people say, and I'm like, okay, we need to fix that. Okay, we need to fix that. I'm just like, yeah, I feel like kind of like empty, but at the same time, like, okay, I need something to do. So okay, so I'll just try and find all these things.
It's wonderful and feeling grateful, and like always, like we did early on have this kind of an. Like let's just push it and be ambitious, be be bold about unique ideas, and it's a risk. It's always a risk. Like we loved it and loved making it and trusted that, but especially coming close to launch, you start to be nervous. Then finally, well, how will this go down? And it's been so wonderful to see the response. I do feel that this kind of crazy content, like combination of different genres and different kind of like layers in it, that's a modern thing. I did get this feeling watching the Everything Everywhere All at Once, the film, which I deeply fell in love with. And obviously we were really, really deep into this and everything locked. But when I watched it and saw how people loved it and how it was kind of like, taken, I felt that, well, we have crazy stuff, not the same stuff, but I feel similarly mashed up really far into pop culture references kind of thing, and I felt that, well, yeah, like I got some confidence out of that feeling that, well, we are trusting our vision and like the time is right for something like this.
Well, Kyle, Sam, thank you guys so much for talking with us. We'd love to talk to you again soon with other stuff you got cooking up. But for now, we'll see you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, let me ask you, have you guys started your Christmas shopping yet? Your holiday shopping?
Oh, no.
No.
What?
Oh,
No.
yeah. Did you know that Christmas is coming and you'll need to buy gifts for other people?
Oh,
Did you know
boy.
this?
Oh man.
Well, what am I going to buy?
I have the perfect gift suggestion for you and for your loved ones / friends. Have you heard about Raycon?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I have.
Okay, all right, good. Well, it's the holidays are coming up, and Raycon make a perfect gift because they make an excellent product at a very reasonable price. And right now, they're doing like a whole Black Friday discount thing, which means you can get a pair of Raycon even cheaper, making them the perfect gift idea.
Yeah, they're an easy gift. I got a pair from my dad. Basically, anybody in your family, it strikes that category. But Raycon has expanded with Raycon Home and Raycon PowerTech. When you hear PowerTech, you're like, what is that? Well, the biggest thing from PowerTech is their 5-star reviewed Magic 180 cable. Lets you charge iOS, micro USB, Type-C, super fast with 100-watt power delivery, and it's super flexible. So it's got like kind of like a cool little directional thing to it.
Yeah.
It's clever.
As someone
I like
who
it, I
has
like
a
it.
drawer, it's just called the drawer of different cables that I have to go into. Having one thing with just like the different heads and everything, easy. Love that.
Very clever. Like
But of
it.
course, their biggest product are the wireless earbuds. They have been tried and true for a while now. 32-hour battery life, a handy dandy little carrying case that's smaller than your average earbuds, but the sound quality is great. It's got IPX water resistance, so you can really kind of mess around with these guys, and noise isolation. And when you pop them in your ears, they don't fall out. So it really covers all the bases.
Oh, yeah. So to get everyone in the holiday shopping spirit a little bit early this year, Raycon is currently offering 20% off everything on their site with select items up to even 50% off. So hurry now down to buyraycon.com/friends to get 20 to 50% off site-wide. Again, that's buyraycon.com/friends to score up to 50% off some Raycon products. Once again, buyraycon.com/friends.
Jake, what was it like talking to Sam Lake? I know you love him.
Oh, it was cool. He was really nice. I wasn't really that nervous, which is good.
I would
because
have
I've been looking at his face for so many years.
If I was on the call, I wouldn't have made it. Max Payne is one of my favorite games of all time. It was probably a good thing that I couldn't make it. Otherwise, I would have just been like, hey, Alan Wake 2 is fun and all, but can you talk about in chapter 2 of Max Payne where this happened? Like, I would have just, it would have been bad.
What is nice though, in the interview and just in general, like Sam Lake, Remedy, like they don't shy away from the fact that like Max Payne was a formative part of their careers and like it influenced them moving forward, and they're proud of that. They're not like, oh yeah, we made that weird little game. Like, no, it's a big part of their thing, and I like that. It's cool.
Good. I just wanted you to have a good time, because when we were putting it together, I was just like, I gotta get Sam for the boys.
Also, I don't thank you for the opportunity, first of all. But also Abby, I don't know if it made it in the edit, but Abby met Max Payne. Like Abby jumped Abby jumped in front of the camera as we were talking.
I felt so bad because they were answering a question and I like giggled because Abby was looking like she was in the office down the lens of the camera.
It was great.
Yeah, she turns and looks right in the camera. Oh, cats, man. Oh, boy. Well, before we jump into the games we're playing, I did want to hear a little bit more about Indieland. Gerard, specifically, I know you talked about it on the podcast a little bit last year, but like, what's the elevator pitch for what exactly it is?
Sure. So Indieland started about 6 years ago. My buddy Vernon had a show called Scare to Care, which was like a yearly charity show he would do for Camp Cassim. And it was basically just bringing a bunch of content creators together to play scary games. And eventually he stopped making that show after several years. And my producer, Michael, was like, hey, I used to make that show. That show was really fun. We should do our own version of that every year and kind of make it a cool celebration of games and raise money for a charity. And so he was like, I wish we had a charity that we could donate to. And I was like, oh, I run my own charity called the Open Hand Foundation, and all the money that we aggregate, I started it when I was a young boy with my dad in honor of my mom who had dementia. And so we just every year we try and raise as much money as possible, and then we go work with Alzheimer's Association of America, University of San Francisco, Association for FTD, which is what my mom had, FTD. So we've like worked with big and small organizations across the board, and he was like, it'd be really cool if we did a show all about raising money for people who are making huge headways in dementia research and prevention and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. We have the organization to do it. We just, need to come up with a theme. And so we kind of looked at the gaming space and said, hey, like, what can I do that like can make an impact on multiple fronts? And so that's when he said, hey, well, what if we made it a strictly indie game show where we just feature indie games by small teams, from publishers who are just trying to get eyeballs in front of their games. And so that's kind of where Indieland came from. We in the beginning, we themed it as like every block, if you will, would be a different type of indie game land. So it was like, we had like the roguelike galley, which is just like all roguelikes for like a couple hours. And then it was like, I forget, Michael came up with a bunch of dumb puns, but the puns were all like, to give you an idea that in this block, if you will, we're only playing indie horror games, we're only playing roguelikes and Metroidvanias, we're only playing beat 'em ups or whatever it is. And so after our first year, we raised like, I want to say like 60 grand, and we said that's a lot of money and let's keep going. And so we've been doing it every year since, and we've raised, I think as of this year, we've raised over 750 grand over the last 6 years. So amazing. And it's just been so fun to see it kind of come together, because now publishers come to us and say, hey, we have 10 games we'd love to feature. And a lot of the developers like fly out in person and they form friendships and like work on games together and collaborate and do their own little game jams. And they like, a few of them went to Japan together for Bit Summit. Like, it's just a really cool community thing that's kind of been happening. And so this year was supposed to be an in-person event, but at the last minute I said, you know what, let's not make it in person, because that was last year's thing. Let's like do it right and make it affordable for everyone and just do it digital. And so that's when FlyQuest stepped in and said, hey, we'll sponsor the event. And so we had it at FlyQuest headquarters. FlyQuest is like an esports organization in Culver City, and they were so fun to work with. They were really great. They let us ruin their place. There was a lot of watermelon and pumpkin smashing. It was nuts. It was
like a Dexter kill room in there.
Yeah, we had a room called The Room that was just anything insane that happened in that room. It was a lot. But I mean, and Tam and Lucy helped co-host the show. So Lucy probably has a way different experience than I had, because I was just in nonstop, no sleep mode, trying to stream as many games as possible and interview as many devs as possible.
It was awesome. Like, it was so fun, and it was just such a fun mix of it's kind of, it feels weird to say this, but it's like, it's nice to be at a charity stream thing that's not focused around like alcohol too, in a weird way. It was just like very chill vibes, and like obviously there were things that you could like, donation incentives, like Gerard almost died on hot sauce overdose and waxing and stuff, but it was just really fun. Like, it was just really nice vibes. The devs all had a really fun time. People were wish listing and donating and going to check out demos and stuff. And yeah, I had a lovely weekend.
I got slapped 12 times. That was fun.
You did get
by
slapped.
whom?
Anna Brisbane.
Oh, cool.
Nice. You know her from Bayonetta 3 more recently.
Sure.
She voices one of the main characters in WayForward's new Slap game. It's like a Flash game that got ported to consoles. Oh, I gotta remember it, or else I'm gonna get. I think it's called.
You're gonna get slapped again.
I know. I do not want to. It's called Rose and Camellia Collection, and it's a bunch of Flash games that were made a long time ago that are getting converted into console games, and the whole bit is all like, it's like a Korean soap opera or Japanese soap opera based around slapping people. And so in that moment, I was like, anyone who donates $100, I will let Anna slap me as hard as she can. And so like within 30 minutes, like $1,200 came in, and she just comboed the crap out of me. There's a lot of gifs online of me being slapped. And let me tell you, Anna does not hold back. She really, really hit me. There was no There was no sugarcoating. She just slapped the crap out of me, but it was for a good cause. Yeah. So
no, and I got to wax people. There was people were smashing watermelons with baseball bats as well. Mm-hmm. There was
sounds a pretty riotous event.
Awesome.
I don't know, man. Like
it really fun.
Sounds like you guys needed a permit for this kind of event. You know what I mean? Like
good to play a bunch of cool games too. Like having folks were dialing in and people were in the couch and it was really
cool. Lucy, Elspeth, Tam and I played RoboDunk.
Oh,
holy God, man! It's imagine NBA Jam, but you're in mechs.
Cool.
And every single mech has different skills and abilities, and it's like basically Mario Strikers Charge, but with big mechs and NBA Jam.
Shit.
Yeah,
and like, cool. If you charge your meter, you like go into space and do like a super slam dunk from outer space, and oh God, we easily the most addictive and explosive game we played all weekend. It was great.
That one was because that one's out already.
Yeah, it's out right now. You can buy it.
RoboDunk. I haven't felt that way about a game since playing like Rocket League for the first time in terms of just like being in the room and the energy with people. I think that
it was also like stop motion-y too. It was really cool.
I didn't realize we were talking about it on the GameSpot podcast this week too, and we watched the trailer and I didn't realize that the mechs looked like kind of Lego guys too.
Yeah,
which was really cool. But there was there's such a variety in the experiences because there was, that one which is very high octane, working together as teammates, and then there was something like Farewell North, which is very emotional. It's kind of about this girl, and her relationship with her mother, and she's gone to Scotland and she's with her dog, and basically the color palette is really muted and very sad, and she's very emotional, and then the dog is solving puzzles and trying to cheer her up and bringing color back into the world, which is really beautiful.
That's nice.
And then there was horror stuff like Desktop Explorer, which was basically a Windows 95 desktop, but someone's left you messages and you have to solve puzzles.
Right.
And you do.
Oh, I've seen this actually.
It was
super
cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, I loved playing that one because the devs were there, and I was like trying to solve the puzzles. I was like, I don't know how to get this one, and they were like, well, have you tried, like renaming a file because the file's corrupted, or you can unhide folders that have been hidden in the operating system, and that was really cool.
Man, that takes me back.
It was I'd forgotten half the stuff. I was like looking for solitaire and Minesweeper.
Totally.
But my wish list has grown exponentially after the weekend too.
It's cool for that sort of stuff. Yeah, when I go to PAX or whatever and I just cruise the indie section, and then you come out with a list of like, oh, add all these 15 games to my list. Thank you very much. It's a nice feeling.
That was the really cool thing, is that we have an IndieLand Steam curator page that features every single game for all 5 days of IndieLand, and we even did them in order, so you could like see hour by hour, block by block what we featured.
That's awesome.
And it was just so cool because I guess we hit some kind of algorithmic thing on Steam, and so for like 3 or 4 days, the devs were like, holy crap, our wish lists are kind of skyrocketing through the roof. But then Steam, like they devalued it after a couple of days and took it down. So it was a weird thing. I guess we were supposed to tell Steam to do it during the show, as opposed to like, we just uploaded it and then suddenly it was like the internet, and just like it was trending on Steam for quite some time. But it was just really cool to kind of see those devs go, man, I had like 10 wish lists, and now I have at least several hundred to 1,000, because you guys know how it is. Every wish list counts. It really helps.
It does, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on another successful IndieLand.
Thank you.
Sounds awesome.
Thank you.
People, go check it out. Definitely check out that Steam stuff, because a lot of games. Always good to find. In case you feel like you didn't have enough games, there are more. Believe it or not.
There's always more
video games.
So speaking of games, let's dive into what we've been playing. I'll rip the Band-Aid off and just get this out of the way, because I was out sick last week when it was time to talk about Spider-Man. My thing, my life. Shout out to Ben Hansen for replacing me. He did great. Big fan. But just real in short, because I feel like you guys have probably talked it up a lot. Spider-Man 2, I really like. I don't like it as much as Spider-Man 2018. It doesn't quite emotionally hit as hard, but where it does hit hard here is like, hey kid, do you like the animated series? You like Jim Lee comic books? Do you want like just crazy like Venom shit everywhere? Like that made me very happy. Having so much crazy stuff going on screen, a really good visual representation of Venom, a threatening Venom, Spider-Man squaring off against him, but then also integrating Miles Morales into the story, where Miles Morales is caught up in a story with Kraven and the symbiote. Like, very interesting. I really liked it for that. I wish it was longer. Not even in terms of gameplay hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In terms of gameplay hours, that's what everybody's jammed up about. I personally, I just felt like the story not necessarily flew by, but I felt like some beats didn't have time to like totally breathe without spoiling anything. There's a couple of sections of the game where it's like, oh, that happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then it just keeps going, where like I feel like in Spider-Man 2018 they were very good at like, all right, well, like let's stop and like fucking cry for 5 minutes and like do a whole thing, where this was like, no, let's go next crazy set piece.
No cry.
Which is good, but also, otherwise, yeah, it was just kind of like gameplay wise, it felt similar to the last game, combat wise. I found the bosses more difficult this time around.
Oh yeah,
I felt like
massively.
I felt like they went on too long, like a phase.
Some
too
of them,
long.
I agree.
Yeah, some of them I would. Yeah, regular enemy encounters though, and I wanted more enemy factions, and
The
regular
symbiotes
enemy
got
encounters
annoying.
were pretty easy.
The symbiotes towards the end got really annoying. I thought, like,
Yeah, I agree with that. Big time. Yeah, but also because I was at that point at that point in the story, like I'd kind of had enough of doing lots of fighting. I was like, because it was really working towards this crescendo, and then you're like, wow, I have to fight this new symbiote faction thing. But I guess this is semi spoilers right now because we're a few weeks out from this game now.
Yeah.
So we can talk like some light spoilers, not full spoilers,
no big story
but like
spoilers.
no big spoilers. But yeah, like later in the game, symbiote enemies rock up, and I feel like at that point, I was like, no, I've had enough of all of that. I just want to see the end of the story. Thank you very much. But yes, that's they.
If we are talking like light spoilers, it was shown in some of the late marketing, the intro of the game. With Sandman.
Oh yeah.
What a hell of a way to,
that was
bold.
It felt like a very good superhero-y movie way to start a game.
Yes. Incredible.
Where it was like villain of the week. Oh, what's that? Let's go. And then the actual gameplay set piece was like one of the biggest of the game. Like it was like, holy shit, man. How are they gonna
I love the aftermath of it too. Like as you're doing the collectibles attached to it, like the city is still full of sand, and then like as you're done as you're doing each of the collectibles and the side quests, suddenly the sand is going away and the city is rebuilding itself, and then you forget about it, and then on to the next thing. It's just really cool.
So Brian Intihar in, I don't know if it was an R interview or maybe it was another one. I read it, I watched a couple of them talking about stuff like that, like the sand and like having things that happen in the world and then they like stick around. His example was like, the big helicopter scene in 2018 happened, and then like once you start playing again, you turn around and there's not like a helicopter crash through the city. So I am very curious to see if they can continue that into the third game. I would like to see even more of that like cause and effect of the city, because it's like, how else are you going to make New York City and everything interesting for either a DLC or a little expansion side game and then a third game.
I mean, it's also I'm what excited. I dislike about what Marvel is, but movies have become. Like, how many times can you have a world-altering event, and then I guess they picked up on this on like Spider-Man Homecoming, where it was like, you finally get to see what happens to the people who have to pick up the pieces. But it's something that Marvel definitely ignored for a very long time. It would just be,
there's a fucking space god in the middle of the ocean turned to stone. That's like the size of like Africa.
Yes.
And everybody's like, yeah, that's a thing. Like, what, they turn it into a national park or something? Like, I want to know, man. I think just in short, I do like that Brian Intihar did confirm that this is going to be in the same like their Wolverine is going to be in the same universe as the Spider-Man, because I think a lot of people have been asking for that.
Yep.
You know, like when Avengers Tower was like teased and stuff like that.
And then you go there and he doesn't even say anything.
No, in this one he's like, there's a building.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I'm walking
here. Did you
here.
see they patched in today the Daredevil law firm sign? Yeah. I don't know if they accidentally left it out or if it's some kind of thing that they're gearing up for, but yeah, it got patched in.
Yeah, a lot of fans have found some weird stuff behind some walls around there.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
If it's the Hand, that'd be really cool. Also, if it was the Hand, what if they went into the weird new modern Punisher where he's like the leader of the Hand? That's like a weird tangent, but a lot of cool shit. There's potential for them to essentially pick up where the MCU is kind of waning in some ways for many people. I think the Marvel Game Studios have a way to do that in the video game realm where I don't think people will immediately be as like, oh god, universe building, really?
Totally.
I think there's room in games still, like where people are going to want that. Like clearly, if you look at fans and stuff, like people do, you know, some of the things they referenced in this game, people are like, holy shit, let's keep it going. So
yeah. Like imagine how excited it would be if they just announced a full-on X-Men game. Some studio is just going to make a proper ass X-Men game, AAA, like Guardians of the Galaxy level quality, but X-Men.
Hey, please, we already have that game. It's called X-Men Destiny.
Wow.
I don't even think
I do love me some Destiny, so
I don't even think you can. I think that was one that Silicon Knights had to, like, you can't even buy it anymore.
Was that the Silicon Knights one? I think it was.
I think so. I had a copy of it somewhere, and then when they recalled it, I was like, oh, I can retire on this bad game.
There are, if you go...
It was made by Silicon Knights, it was.
Hell yeah.
If you go north of, like, what is there, Forest Hills, or you go north of Queens, like the north end, in the game, there are 2, maybe even 3, like abandoned mansions in the woods with really long driveways.
There we go.
One is used for a set piece, one is used for a side quest. But I found them early and I was like, oh, is this like, you know, geographically it should be like, you know, 20 miles further north, but whatever. But yeah, and like, so like that, having that excitement, like I don't have that excitement about like the MCU movies now as much, where like you see something, you're like, is that Iron Man's shoe? Like, what the fuck? Like, you don't have that anymore. So to have that a little bit in a game is cool. So I hope they continue with that.
Well, we do know at the very least that Wolverine and Spider-Man exist in the same cinematic universe.
It would be
for these guys,
so cool for DLC. You just, you know, you hear him call someone Bub, and then, you know, it's like, you know, that's all I need.
Well, there's rumors that the DLC is going to be Daredevil focused, actually, as a result of the stuff that's been discovered. So it's kind of like, yeah, I can see it.
Did you see that thing today? So that Daredevil game that they were working on 20 years ago or something that never got released. A dev just released the whole thing, or at least what they had. So,
what?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. Today, I think, or yesterday, they just released.
Oh, thank you for
the Daredevil.
Know what the next Jake Baldino video is about?
Yeah.
There we go.
Daredevil
Content mode engaged.
Oh yeah, right, 2004 Daredevil game unearthed.
Yeah. Okay. There was. Is this because we've seen footage of this in the past? Yeah, man. Oh boy. Anyway, that's enough of the superhero nonsense and enough of this. I do want to hear about Mario Wonder. Ralph, did you guys talk about this last week?
We did. We did. Oh, no, it wasn't last week. Was it the week before? Was it last week?
The last time we did FPS.
It was last episode. You're
fortnight.
Right,
yes, the last fortnight.
Yeah. So I was playing it and am still playing it, actually. I'm just kind of like, just trying to play more of it for fun when I have time, because I just keep coming back to it because I love it so much. Wow. I had thought that I wouldn't necessarily make a video, but I think I might actually do a quick video on it just because I love it that much. It really is that amazing and wonderful. And I was talking to someone else about it the other day, and we were kind of on the same page because we both had to, like, we both knew we were going to review it. And we're like, oh, okay, we're going to review a 2D Mario game. We weren't particularly excited about it, right? Because it's like we were 3D Mario people, but both of us have continued to play it post the review period being concluded because it's just that fantastic. So
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
It's
actually, and because
pretty
I know
good.
that Gerard, you had just done your coverage on it, your video, so like you hadn't played it before. Well, you were just playing through it while we were talking, but now you've done the full completion of it.
Oh yeah, it's a very easy completion. It's a very easy breezy completion. The thing that Ralph and I didn't talk about because it wasn't active at the time because no one had the game was the online component and how fun that ends up becoming. It kind of becomes this Strands Souls-like kind of mechanic where as you're playing online, you see everyone playing the level that you're playing with you, and you can help each other.
Oh, so it's not distracting?
I don't think so at all.
No, I don't think so.
I never once was like, oh, there's too many of them because you only have 4 at a time. But depending on how long you take, people can beat stages and new ones can show up. And you can give items to each other. If you store an item, you can give it to a ghost and they can grab it and then they get to go with it.
I did not even know that, by the way.
Oh, really? Yeah. If you see someone who just died and you saved them and they're like baby Luigi or whatever, you can give them your stored power up and it'll appear in their world and they'll grab it and then they'll wave at you or whatever and then they run off.
Did not even know that. That is so good. Wow.
Yeah.
No one's ever given me their power up. What the fuck, man? This is bullshit.
There's to kind of go along with that, there are some stages that are like almost like puzzles where it's like you have to find all the 5 coins in this one particular little puzzle room area. And those stages are always the most fun to see the ghosts in because you just see a bunch of people freak out and not know what to do. And you're all panicking, trying to find the puzzles. And then when one of you finds the puzzle, it's about trying to convince everyone else, hey, I found the puzzle over here. Look. And then no one's paying attention. They're just like trying to explore every nook and cranny of it. And as you get towards like the harder end game stuff, the harder, more complicated levels, it's really fun. It's really a testament of testing your knowledge and skill of the stages that you played. And there's two special. The special world is like you can go access at the end of every world, but they're kind of like skill checks of like how well have you learned and exceeded at this thing. And the last 2 special worlds are like all the badges levels and then all of the wonders in one big level. So it's just a visual festivity of spectacle. Like you just have to keep going through it, and it's really, really, really cool. And if you're not a big Mario person, that's okay. It doesn't have to be that hard. If you're a huge Mario person, it's going to be a breeze for you.
I'm getting my nieces a Switch for Christmas with this.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a great gift.
Absolutely.
Very good.
I'm not in the country, but I am the cool aunt.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely.
There you go.
Definitely. Yeah, look, I think it's a genuine. I'd be so stunned if it's not on the Game of the Year list. No, not just from the scores. Like, you look at the scores, you're like, well, it's got a really high score, so therefore it's going to be a Game of the Year nominee. But I just think creatively, just in terms of its energy and how fun it is, how vibrant it is. Like, everyone who comes into contact with it walks away really loving it. And the quality of it is absurd. It's just, I really do believe, I don't think it's going to win Game of the Year because obviously Baldur's Gate has that locked up, it seems. But I just think it's definitely going to have plenty of nods, and I think it deserves every one of them because it's just a really fantastic video game. And if you are like me and you are just pretty ambivalent towards 2D Mario games, honestly have a crack. Like, just if you can get a cheap copy of it or something, it's kind of hard with Nintendo games, I guess. But if you can get your hands on it by some means, I think there's almost no chance that you are going to walk away disappointed or feel ripped off. I think you're going to, there's every chance that you're just going to be so pleasantly surprised by it, for sure.
And playing with friends is fun. It's not gross and invasive. Like, if you play online, the online lobbies work great. It's like surprisingly
It's annoying though to like do it because you have to add the friend code shit, and you can't voice chat, you can't message each other, all that rubbish. It's just kind of like, if they fix all of that up, it would feel so much better. But you're right, it still is fun to play when you like wade through all that bullshit.
Yeah. I also got to take a little behind the sneak peek at Super Mario RPG. Do you have any Super Mario RPG fans in the chat? Anyone here? No.
So every time
I played it when it released.
Yeah, every time I hear Super Mario RPG, I do the Wii Shop update. Like, Super Mario RPG, Sonic the Hedgehog, Donkey Kong.
What is this?
Jake,
Hang on, I don't know what this is.
Jake.
Oh. I know,
What is
I mean,
this?
I had to be
Legend of
educated.
Lola 1 and 2. Yeah.
What is this? What is
Harvest
this?
Moon. Yeah,
Oh.
It's a Vine, not a
Look,
Vine.
No,
an
it's a
old
YouTube video.
Oh,
It's
Old, like,
Nirvana,
really YouTube.
Nirvana the band. Remember that movie I told you about that Pro CD was in? Blackberry. It's written and directed by the same guy who's in Nirvana the band. It's his.
Dennis from It's Always Sunny is in it.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, years ago they did this skit, and it's
Years
just about
ago,
the-
2006, 2007. By
That
the way,
is
Yeah, it was-
not just years ago, Lucy. A decade or two ago.
So it's about their love of the Wii shop and how it updates every Wednesday, and then they go like, "What if I write a song using the games as lyrics?" And then they sing the song, and the first line is Super Mario RPG, and then it's genuinely when it hit the GameSpot office, it was like you could see who opened the link because everyone was just watching it. And then sometimes I'd walk past people and they would just be watching it and like trying to look at me. And I think we were at, it was a Game Awards last year, I think, Jake, where me, you, and Tam were staying in the same hotel, and we were walking back from the bar, and we walked past. I can't remember what the name of the shop or
Bossa Nova.
Bossa Nova. There's a line in there. He goes, "What is that? A Bossa Nova beat?" And Tam and I both said it.
We should have
Laughed.
crooned it out.
Yeah. And Jake was like, I have
"What?"
no idea what you're talking about. So we stopped him. It was like 1 a.m. in downtown Los Angeles. We're like, watch this right now. And we'll send you that link, Ralph, after we finish recording here.
It's a good old
I look
YouTube
forward to
video where, like, you know, every, like, when you can't come up with a joke at the end, so you just start screaming, and then it's a hard cut.
It's really
Like,
good.
perfect. I miss those days.
Hey, Super Mario RPG.
Yeah, Super
Yeah,
RPG.
Super
Is
Mario
it good?
RPG.
What's the deal?
I played it when I was like 10, and I was like, this looks cool, but why is it boring? So I'm excited to like play it again as an adult.
Jake, no.
Gerard's
I was a
face.
little kid, and I hadn't really had my
but now
RPG.
you're an adult.
Like,
You've had
thing.
so many years to play it.
I know.
Look, Super Mario RPG is one of the greatest RPGs of all time. It's very, very good. It was. You haven't played it, Lucy. You can't judge me.
I'm just
You haven't played it, so
looking.
you can't judge me.
I'm just looking
You
online.
you can't judge me.
That
You just
compressor
wave
is
a
working
weapon at you?
hard.
What was that?
Sorry. I lost my temper.
It's fine. I'm sorry.
The point is that it's a great title. It's one that many fans never thought would ever be remade. This is one of those things where Square Enix teaming up, classic Square Enix, Squaresoft teaming up with Nintendo to make this smorgasbord of a crazy cool JRPG or RPG, and it's clever, it's funny, it's got weird characters. It's the only game in the Mario universe that has characters like Mallow or Gino, which became fan favorites. One of the reasons why you hear Gino for Smash so often when the Smash Bros. Community was begging for Gino to join Smash is because of this game. And it's an interesting standard fare of Mario because you're not trying to hunt down Bowser. In fact, Bowser joins your team. You team up with Bowser and Peach and these characters, Mallow and Gino. And basically when the game starts, it acts as if you're like, oh, I have to save Princess Peach got kidnapped by Mario or by Bowser. I gotta go save him and save her. And so you run, you jump, and then hooray, you beat Bowser in the opening tutorial of how to play the game. But then a big ass sword comes crashing down into Bowser's keep and destroys something called the Star Road.
And it splits. Cloud Strife.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Good try, Lucy.
And it splits into 7 stars. And the whole bit is that people can no longer wish for a star for their dreams to come true because the Star Road is broken. And so Mario and team have to basically go around the Mushroom Kingdom to repair Star Road so that people can dream and wish again. And so it's very funny, very clever. The combat system is phenomenal. Great music, great music. And so for years everyone's been begging for a sequel, for some kind of second love of this game, and we never got that in that era because from there, the people who made those games split into 2 teams. You had the Paper Mario team and the Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga team. And so that's where the future of Mario RPGs ended up going. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of see why this is a big deal for a lot of Mario enthusiasts out there because this RPG does not get love. It's a very rare thing. And I think a lot of people are speculating if this remake hits, they already have the engine, they've already got all the teams in the creative, will there officially be a Super Mario RPG 2? And I think that's where everyone is like, please God, let it be good. Please God, please, 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 please. Because if they do this, it'll be it's like creating a sequel to a game that would never have gotten one in a million years.
That would be so cool. They could add like more RPG mechanics to it, like you can romance Bowser or something. Like Bowser's at the camp at night and he's like, so Mario, and you can like be like, oh,
I know we've always had our
hello Bowser.
I cannot talk about Mario RPG if you have not played it, Jake, because I can or cannot confirm that you may or may not romance Bowser in the game.
Oh my God.
Excuse me?
Why did no one tell me this before?
I cannot confirm because none of y'all played it, but there are moments that evoke that same thing, Jake. It's not a guarantee 1-to-1, but it's very similar.
I'm just imagining like the Lae'zel scenes in Baldur's Gate 3 with Bowser, and Bowser comes up to you and he's like, I'm obsessed with your taste.
It's not quite like that. Not quite like that. Either way, the remake looks amazing. Art style wise, it's very different than what we've all know of it. They have really cool options like changing from the classical and the modern music because they redid the soundtrack in a modern tone and you can kind of combine them. They made the game significantly easier for people who aren't the biggest fans of RPGs. So now timed hits in Mario RPG is like when a character was struck. What? Timed hits? What did I say?
Timed hits?
Timed.
Timed tits.
Timed hits.
Timed
timed
There's
hits.
a timed tits.
Timed hits.
Timed hits. Did I say timed tits? I don't think I did.
It's my
You
broken brain.
definitely
hurt.
said timed tits.
Timed hits.
Timed tits.
Timed hits.
All three of us are like, wait, what now?
Timed hits.
Timed hits. Okay.
Okay,
Look,
got it. Timed hits.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. Y'all should play Mario
No,
RPG.
no. Go. Tell us. They made it easier. Timed hits.
They made it easier because there's an exclamation point now that appears. So if you hit it when it shows up, you know when to hit the timed hit.
You gotta hit those timed tits. You gotta hit them at the right time.
Hold on. The usual thing is getting a timed hit is timed tits, baby. That's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Right.
Wait, how was the music? How was the updated music? Because I do listen to the original music.
It's very good. It feels very. It just feels like, hey, what if you went to go see the Super Mario RPG Orchestra perform? That's the vibe that it evokes.
Wow.
It's very good, and you can change it at any given moment. They also have a new chain system where whenever you do a timed hit, it builds a combo. And as you do more timed hits, the combo goes up, but so do your stats. So the more of a chain you build, the more powerful your party becomes in the moment.
So like
and then also
Pass in Persona 5, I guess?
Not quite. Okay. It's more like the overall chain combo hit overall. There's no like
right.
It's like as long as you keep hitting those timed hits and don't miss one, your combo goes up. That also includes when you get hit, because timed hits are also on the receiving end. So when someone hits you, you can block an attack or reduce its damage. Gotcha. And so the more you build your combo meter, the more opportunities you have to kind of build your stats temporarily. And then one of the biggest new things they added to this game was there is a super move now, like a team super move. So as you perform more and more of these timed hits, you have in the corner a meter that slowly builds percentage. And when it gets to 100%, you do a crazy cool team move. And so they only showed the one in the demo of Mario, Gino, and Mallow because it was a particular part in the game. But they did say that having Peach and Bowser in your party in those different combinations will change those moves, which is pretty cool. And then the other big thing they added was there's a bestiary. So now you can, what did I say now? What did I do now?
It wasn't you, it was Jake this time.
My cat bit me.
Oh no.
Jake just like, first of all, earlier when she was going at the furniture, but Jake just like lovingly put his hand out, stroking Abby, and she just went, ah.
Look, the point is it's going to be sick, and you all should play it and go play
So
the
this
original.
This
sounds
is my
like a
Christmas
full
game. This sounds like chill.
This sounds pretty great. Like this is obviously a remake, not a remaster. Then, right?
Oh, I would say it's a remake. It's a very.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like. It's pretty faithful to what the original was,
Right.
and apparently they added a very robust post game where you can fight more and more bosses. But they also announced today, and all the press coverage that just came out too, that you can now change characters mid battle, which was not a thing before. So before you'd be like, you have your 3 characters and that's the fight. Now in the middle of the battle, you can change out your characters on the fly, which is really, really cool.
So you said earlier they kind of made it a little easier. Is there still that challenge there if you want it? Are there difficulty modifiers?
They made the game easier within an exclamation point situation, but they also made it easier as in there is now a difficulty toggle that makes the game literally easier. There's easy mode and normal mode.
Gotcha.
And that's it. There's no hard mode, which I guess they kind of consider it the classic setting, if you will, from the original game. But yeah, if you are a Mario RPG fan, you're probably going to love this bad boy. I've been waiting for it my whole life. I cried when I found out that it was being remade. I didn't think it was going to happen. And here it is. And I cannot recommend it enough. Y'all, I don't think you guys should necessarily play the original because this new one's going to be pretty close to what the original was. But I definitely recommend that once you've played this version to go back and check it out. Because Ralph, I don't even think you guys got it in Australia.
What? Really?
I
did not know that.
All those hard drugs.
Lucy,
That's right.
You
What was in
didn't
the game?
either. It was a Japan and America game only.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
So this is the first time it's being localized for the UK and Australia and whatnot.
They have something like it's the Commonwealth.
I was going to say, what is Mario going to say? Oi, governor.
Yeah,
they're just going to take the American localization, put U's in.
That's right. He has he's a working class man. He has some pro-Irish sentiment that they didn't want doing the rounds in the UK. Back in the 90s, they were like, no, that's too sensitive. We can't do that here.
It did release eventually on Virtual Console in Europe and Australia. And once again on Wii U. But before, when it originally came out on the Super Nintendo, you could not get it in those regions.
Wow, unless you imported and did all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. That's cool. You see, you got me excited about it now, and I'm not typically a Nintendo person, so I think that's my Christmas
Lucy, look, Lucy, when I want you to remember this. Okay. When you level up a character, I need you to pull out your phone and take a video and tell me it doesn't make you smile.
Okay. Deal.
Tell me it doesn't make you smile.
Okay. Oh.
Okay.
Okay, I'm excited now.
Okay, good.
I have a long flight next week. Maybe I'll down. Is it out by the time I go?
No, it's not. It's like the end of the month. It's like the 17th or something.
It's the 17th.
Yeah.
Flight back then. Aw, that sounds really fun.
Yeah. You guys will love it. I promise you'll love this game. If you don't love it,
I'm in.
You can slap me in person the next time you see it. Slap fight.
And that's the Gerard guarantee.
I think he's starting to like it. Speaking of RPGs, in terms of the games we wrote down that we're playing, Lucy, you put Final Fantasy 12?
Yeah.
Lucy, that came out a long time ago. We got to talk about that. That's not.
Yeah. Says the man is out here talking up super like Mario RPG.
Yeah.
It's being remade. It's topical and it's timed hits, Ralph. Okay.
That's fair. Okay. You're right. You got me on that one.
I think 12 just had an anniversary as well. I saw some people tweeting about it. No, I was writing it for, I don't know if I can announce that I'm a part of this thing yet, but I did, I wrote a thing about it. Anyway, it was fun and I wanted to replay it and revisit it. And man, it's wild how well 12 holds up. It's really good.
I keep hearing that.
Yeah.
I keep hearing that.
Especially, I've been playing the Zodiac Age version that came out, 5 years ago? Maybe more?
Yeah.
What's the difference with Zodiac Age, by the way?
So you just have like one job board, and now you've got 12 different ones in this one.
Okay.
And they like a bunch of other changes, like they re-recorded the score, they changed some of the spells, I think, like some of the abilities impacted slightly different ways, but it's also like the HD remaster. And it has, it's kind of incredible how well it holds up. In my head, I think it was a lot less streamlined. And then I was replaying it and I was like, actually, damn, this gets to the meat of it very, very quickly. You've got pretty much your whole party within the first few hours. And then because of the gambit system and the way that controlled fun, I don't know if you've ever played it or not. If you haven't, very quickly, it's you basically program your teammates based on target action.
Oh yeah, sure, I remember that. Yeah.
And so you could, for example, ally health under 30% heal.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes this great thing where you basically set up all of your plans. You go into some combat. You just see it all come together really well. You can also play it on obviously like double speed, and so it's just so satisfying just to watch it all come together. The story's great. Obviously, a lot of people make comparisons to Star Wars, and there's definitely a lot of things in there that are very, very reminiscent of Star Wars, but I think it is definitely its own beast. It's the Final Fantasy it was my first ever Final Fantasy, actually. Kingdom Hearts doesn't count.
It definitely does not.
It does not count.
It does not count. No.
Does not count. That was my first, a light introduction, and then 12 was my first Final Fantasy. And I've just been really enjoying playing it. I have the Roger ally, the ROG ally. Thank you to.
Oh, I was gonna say I was confused. Like, is he a character in the
no,
game? What?
The
Okay,
ROG
sure.
ally handheld. Thank you to Microsoft. They provided that one for a review, or just coverage, I guess. And so I have to disclose obviously when I got it. And honestly, it runs really well on it, and I've just been, and I took it to Indieland with me, so playing it on the flight in between segments. I was just having a great little time, and it's just been really nice. I think in a year where every game seems to be a 10 out of 10, it's just, and like there's been so much pressure obviously in our line of work to play everything, and like, as we're kind of coming to the tail end of that, spending some time revisiting a classic and revisiting a game that I know that I loved, even though I didn't remember it that well, has been a very nice, a nice way to kind of cap off a review, like big launch window. And I've got a big flight next week, so that's 11 hours there. So yeah,
it's a good adventure. Yeah,
great music as well. I've been listening to that soundtrack again. Damn.
Yeah.
Although I will say,
pretty good.
I don't mean this to be shady. Booted it up with with English voice acting. Changed that within like 5 minutes. I couldn't.
Really?
Yeah.
As bad was it? It was bad. There were those days where we couldn't figure out how to dub JRPGs with English voice acting, and it was a rough time. It was a very rough time.
I think it's also like when you're listening to it, it's one of those ones where you feel like they weren't in the same room, or at least like the voice direction's not good because stuff just doesn't run into things neatly.
Definitely.
And then I just think the Japanese voice acting is better. So yeah, it's great. So yeah, Cage.
You heard it here first. Play Final Fantasy 12.
It's the hip new game everyone's talking about.
It is important to know though that Final Fantasy 12, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy Tactics, and I think 11 and 14 are all in the same universe.
Is it?
They're all Ivalice.
Ivalice? Yeah.
Ivalice. They're all in the same.
Yeah.
There are those weird creatures, like Miguelo's one. Are they the Bagan? I can't. Bagaan, I think it is. Where they're really weird, like half human, half creature things. And they are not in any other mainline thing other than Tactics and 14 and 12. Like, then you wouldn't see them in like a 15, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good shit.
Good shit.
Cool.
All right. Well, with that, with game talk, let's jump over to our fabled segment. Gerard, kick it off.
This week in the way back, the week of November the 4th. Let's start with you, Lucy. I know this one. I know exactly what you're gonna say.
4 years ago, at least in Japan. I can't. Yeah, the Western release was. You know what? The Western release was March 2020. So it was. This was one of the last things we filmed in the office before we went away for lockdown. But this week, at least in Japan, 2019 was Persona 5 Royal. So.
Wow. That was how long ago was that? 4 years ago was Royal.
Was 20, yeah.
So that means that would have been like
in Japan.
that means that the original 5 would have been like what, 2 years before that, 3 maybe.
It was
2017.
2016 in Japan, 2017 over here.
Oh my god,
that's so crazy.
So
oh my god,
I reviewed Persona 5 Vanilla.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a perfect 10 or what?
No, it was a 9.
Ooh, wow.
It was a 9. Honestly, in terms of reviewing, and you know, this is a very inside baseball observation. I had that code like at least a month before embargo.
Yes.
And I just rinsed it at work. I did a bunch of the coverage. There was a few of us playing, and so all of like the tips stuff, we had plenty of time to do. Wrote the review, voiced the review, edited the review. Like, we had so much time on it. And I was like, oh, this is such a lovely experience. And Tam just goes, do not get used to that. It will never happen again. It's only because this game came out 5 months ago in Japan that we have the code this early. But yeah, I mean, Persona 5, one of my favorite games of all time. And I marked it as a 9 because towards the end, the boss rush is, I don't think it's very well handled at all. There's obviously some stuff to do with the gay characters, and there's weird stuff with Ann, and it doesn't necessarily land. I didn't think at the time anyway, particularly well. They actually did update and change some of that in Royal, where they fleshed out a bunch of stuff. They added a whole new semester, a new character with also fleshing out another character like Goro Akechi, who his role in Persona 5 I think is great, but the way that they took him and changed him and added to his character and his role in Royal was fantastic. They also added, you know, new gameplay mechanics, new music. They took everything that was so fantastic about 5, they streamlined a lot of it. Like the first 10 hours of Persona 5, very, very handholdy. Very handholdy.
Yeah.
And it's also, there was, in terms of the way that the game dealt with SP, which is what you use to use your Persona abilities, the game would do it in such a way that it wasn't easy to recoup that if you didn't have the correct items.
Loadout.
Yeah. And so it meant that it was kind of like stifling your progress a little bit because you were very dependent on if you had enough of those ability points. And then in Royal, they changed that in the game's economy, so you would just blitz through palaces, and then you had way more time to do the social stuff. Because if you played Persona 5 Vanilla, there would be social links that you'd probably miss because you just didn't have enough time. Persona 5 Royal gave you all that time, gave you the chance to maximize all your social links, all of the things like your intelligence and like the Big Bang Burger stuff, and, you know, spend more time in that world because they know how much people love those characters. I think in terms of taking a game and improving it and it truly being the best version of that game, that's what we got with Royal, and that is why Michael Hyam gave it a 10, which is deserved.
Very cool. Very nice.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Let's go to you, Ralph. What do you got?
Yes. 20 years ago this week, Lord of the Rings Return of the King released. One of the most perfect video games ever. I don't understand how they got it so right that long ago, and then nothing has really come close since then in the Lord of the Rings pantheon, except for Shadow of Mordor, I guess, right? I mean, are there other...
Sort of.
Say again, sorry?
Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor.
Shadow of Mordor, that series. Even then, I personally didn't like that anywhere near as much as I loved these games. I think these were so perfect in terms of adaptations, seeing those films brought to life in that way, but also being very competently made third-person action games that looked fantastic and like cutting-edge tech at the time. Like, this was the era when licensed games could exist and they could be good, you know, they could surprise you and be great. So yeah, I think even then people say, oh, Shadow of War, I'm like, yeah, it was good, don't get me wrong, but I just think it was nothing on this. These were incredible, and I think this is still to this day the absolute peak of the Lord of the Rings video game experience.
Agreed.
You remember the cutscenes? It would show live action, and then it would transition to video game graphics, and you'd go, "Whoa,
incredible!"
You could unlock
incredible.
Couldn't you unlock the like some of the appendices, bonus content stuff from the DVDs would be in the game?
Really, I didn't even know that.
I think so. I remember I have a weird flashbulb memory of playing the game and seeing, you know, like Elijah Wood doing like a behind the scenes thing. But this was the team that went to make Dead Space, or at least a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Like Steve Papustis and Glenn Scoville. Scoville.
Scoville.
Field. Scoville.
Yes. And obviously now we've got like just this week we had this Return to Moria game, which apparently is not great, but it's like it's just enough if you really love Lord of the Rings to like kind of get you in there. And obviously we had Gollum, that was another one. And we haven't really had any strategy games in the Lord of the Rings universe for the last little while, have we?
Not
because there was like the whole RTS like War of the Ring thing ages ago.
There was
War in the North, sorry, yeah.
You know what? I think a genuinely a really great Lord of the Rings game is Lego Lord of the Rings.
I have not played it, but they're always good, so I'm not surprised.
I think it was the first Lego game where they first started using the vocal stems from the movie.
Okay.
And it's just really funny and really cute.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, Return of the King, baby.
Hell yeah, Jake. What's your game for this week?
I was gonna do the Matrix Path of Neo, but to not do another movie game. 17 years ago in 2006, because I'm predictable as hell, we had Tony Hawk's Project 8. This one is often forgotten.
But you had me until you said Project 8. I was like, what?
Project 8 was like the first foray, at least in my mind, the one that really kind of felt built for PS3 and 360 generation. It had a little bit more bigger levels. The graphics were pretty awesome at the time, and there was a gameplay mechanic that I can't believe I could speak so clearly to this 17-year-old game. There was a gameplay mechanic that seemed like a gimmick at first, but once you got into it, actually was pretty awesome. So when you were airborne, if you clicked the left and right stick at the same time, it would go into slow motion mode, like bullet time. And with the analog sticks, you were able to flip the direction of your board. So essentially your feet were the sticks, and like you could flick your stick to the right and their back foot would kick the board and spin it. So you could just do a bunch of like weird spins on your board mid-air and then still try and time it right to have it land perfectly right before you hit the ground. And it actually made for some compelling, fun little combo extensions. They never really carried it through to another game, but it was a fun little spin on the formula.
I think that's how Project Skate controls, right? Do you know
somewhat, yeah.
Project Skate? Yeah, but without the slow mode shit. Like it's meant to be more realistic, but it's the same idea of like the two sticks are the front and back trucks, and like it was cool for that. And people forget about that one, but I really like it. I don't even know that I even knew that existed.
Yeah, I just googled it and I was like, oh, I recognize that box art. The white half of
it was cool. Yeah, they made him look hot. The problem is not the problem, but it was American Wasteland. That was the one that a lot of people have nostalgia for. A lot of people bring up, and I don't think that one's that good.
What was the soundtrack like on this one?
It had that was like the main song, and it was good.
Yeah, I went to Metacritic to look at all the scores and the reviews for the game, and unsurprising to no one, none of the reviews load because most of the websites don't exist anymore. So
I did see the GameSpot one was 7.3 from Jeff Gerstmann.
I tried to read it and it wouldn't load.
Oh,
yeah, it's very interesting.
I'll report that to engineering.
Yeah. Alrighty. My game, to no surprise to anyone, to keep in theme with Mario, is Super Mario 3D Land for the Nintendo 3DS. That came out about 12 years ago. 13 years ago. Yeah,
no.
2011.
Wow.
Was when it came out. I think this is one of the most underrated platformers in Mario's history. It sold about 12 million units, so a lot of people did play it, but it's a 3D platformer that's technically done in a 2D style, right? It's what paved the way for Super Mario 3D World, this being kind of the precursor or sequel for 3D Land, one of the first games to properly utilize the 3D on the 3DS, and it's very cute, it's very fun. If they made the camera a little bit wider, you could probably put it on a console today, and there you go, Nintendo, free idea. And I know you're going to charge $70 for it, you jerks, but there you go. I really like it. Very, very fun game. Very hard to complete if you're not paying attention, because if you die more than 5 times, you cannot technically complete it.
Oh,
what?
What?
Yeah. If you die more than 5 times in Super Mario 3D Land, you get stars and like sheens for your completion. And if you die more than 5 times, you can't get the sheen at the end of your profile. So
I see.
if you die, you have to turn off your 3DS and not save.
Holy shit.
So don't do that, because I did that when I first played the game for the show and had to replay the entire game when it was too late. So don't do what I did. That's it this week of the way back. Back to you, Jake.
Woo. What a week. Wow. A lot of stuff.
That was a lot. That was a big episode.
Thank you to everybody that joined us for all the other segments. We got to get back to playing a bunch of other games to talk about for the rest of the season. So let's go do that. Anybody have anything special they'd like to share before we go?
No. I'm looking forward to playing RoboCop. That's my focus.
Yes, I agree. I'd love to. I just like focusing on RoboCop.
Maybe I'll watch RoboCop for the first time.
Wait, what? Oh my god!
You knew this about me.
No. Did I already know this and I just blocked it out because it's such a painful revelation? God,
I'm so sorry. I'll definitely watch it before Game Awards.
Apologize to him. To Alex Murphy.
I'm sorry, Alex.
Yeah,
Mr. Murphy.
He's been through so much.
He died for your sins.
He died and rose again for you. Oh, man.
Oh, well, with that, thank you folks for listening. Thank you to the sponsors. Thanks for the guests. Rating us on the podcast platforms does help. Clicking the like button on the video version does actually help. So if you like us, thanks for doing that. But that's really it. Thank you guys for watching. Tie your shoes and go to bed.